Good evening. Can you hear me? Awesome. All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Srishna, and I lead InMobi's APAC marketing function, and I'm thrilled to welcome you all to Glance Forward. Before we get started, I wanted to share a quick personal anecdote. Some of you may know that a lot of our teams from Glance and InMobi are actually based in Bangalore. So when we actually heard about the fact that schools and colleges are actually closed, we weren't really concerned about us flying in. We were actually concerned about the people in the room. So I want to just say, first off, a huge thank you to everyone who joined us, and also to everybody who's joined us online on YouTube as well. So thank you so much. I know it's a bit odd to be starting with a thank you, but I guess Mumbai rains do make you do some strange things. But let me get straight to the point. So glance forward. This is the first event we're doing after the pandemic. And when we actually started this event and conceiving the thoughts behind this event, we couldn't help start from a place of deep empathy, right? As CMOs, brand builders, I think we're in the middle of the perfect storm. Be it the rapidly changing pace of technology or the fact that consumers are just not paying attention anymore. In fact, I wouldn't put it past us that we're here for 2 hours, the next 2 hours, and by the time we step out, there just might be another technology, another platform, something else that we all need to catch up on. It's just so likely to happen. But the point is, we wanted to really help brand builders address those challenges, which is why we've put together a series of expert discussions and thoughts from leaders, product leaders, and marketing mavericks to sort of help us understand how can we ride this wave together, how can we all glance forward. So to kick things off, I am thrilled to welcome the CEO and co-founder of InMobi, Mr. Abhay Singhal.
Welcome you all to this fantastic event, and welcome everybody out there on the other side of the line as well, because there are a number of partners and number of InMobians who are joining us via the internet as well. So thank you everybody for being part of the event. As an entrepreneur and a technologist, I've always believed in one thing. There's a very little to distinguish between a great piece of technology and magic. I saw one such magic today. And some of you might think that why Abhay is too late to the game, but so be it. My magic is my magic. I came to the airport and I took my phone out to show the guy my QR code for the ticket. The guy said, "No, you just need to stand in front of the camera." And I said, "What does that mean?" I looked at the camera and the door opened. I went in. Again, I looked at the camera, the door opened. And I looked at the camera and the door opened. This is the first time I was using DigiYatra. So some of you might think that I am laggard in this game. But somebody who's been living in the US for 7 years, believe me, it is nothing short of a magic. And I used to think that the US is really advanced. Because back 7 years ago when I left the country and moved to the US to build InMobi, back then we still used to carry the paper for the ticket to show. And in the US, I could just show my mobile phone and enter the airport. By the way, I still do the same in the US in 7 years. Nothing has changed in the last 7 years. One other shock that I faced last year when I came back to India was just no need to carry a wallet. Again, all of you have been doing that for probably last 5, 6 years. But for me, it was too new to not be paying for something by writing a check or taking out the cash. Believe me, I'm used to paying my milkman or my tennis teacher by writing a check for $10. I'm used to writing checks still. In last 7 years, the country has probably moved from being a trend jacker to a trend setter. Each of these pieces of technology that you are seeing have revolutionized and brought population-grade solutions. And if there was a Nobel Prize for technology, which I guess it is not, I guess the Aadhaar and the UPI will be perfect candidate for it at some point in time. It just fills my heart with pride. I swell up with something that I think the country was always destined to do, but probably the right time hadn't still come. There was one other similar moment that happened just 4 weeks ago. I was sitting at La Croisette in Cannes, looking down from our little place that we had taken during Cannes Lion, looking down towards the Palais. And I see this beautiful Cadbury ad start playing again. And at that point in time, I was sitting with a friend of mine who's a global head of marketing. And out of instinct, I just said, but this ad won a lion last year. Maybe they are just replaying the ad. Maybe they're just showing the world again an ad from Asia. And he said, no, this ad is winning again. I said, what the hell does that mean? How can an ad that won last year win again? Last year, that ad won in the category of innovation, where they had married the technology that is offered through AI and machine learning by including multiple different small and medium shops and bringing them together for the Cadbury Diwali ad, where Shah Rukh Khan speaks and promotes the small and medium-sized shops. This year, that ad won in the creative effectiveness category. They tracked for the whole year, they tracked the impact of that ad on actually the sales of the small and medium shops. And they presented very, very, very credible data to showcase that it was just not a mere innovation. It was an innovation that pushed the category forward. It was an innovation that made the category bigger. And it was an innovation that truly brought the effectiveness or the complexity of India to the life of, to the front of the world. We are a small and medium-sized market store. Mom and pop stores play an important role, and it was the first time a brand like Cadbury was recognizing it. And not only recognizing it, responding to it by combining the technology and innovation. It was another moment of pride. I know we only won 7 awards this year. Maybe there'll be a year where we'll win 70. But every big revolution starts with the first step. There was AI all around in this year, or the year so far. And I can't wait to see what the innovation comes out of the AI in the world of creativity and advertising. In the world of consumer tech, last 7 years, pretty much all the innovation that the world has seen has actually come out of Asia. If you look at the examples of TikTok, look at the example of Shein, look at the example of Temu, look at the example of Lemonade, look at the example of fintech revolution through UPI and Aadhaar and everything. There's not even one single revolution that has come out in the space of consumer tech from the biggest consumer market in the world. But at the same point in time, the Asia is beginning to get extremely confident about the solutions that they are creating and taking them to the world. With the same belief, bunch of us as entrepreneurs have been harboring a dream in the depth of our heart for the last 16 years. Can we give the world completely new consumer tech platform? A consumer tech platform that literally revolutionized the way consumers access and discover information. can we disrupt the consumption in the ways that it has never been done before? Can we bring something in front of the consumer which not only brings or adds value to their life, but that also makes the world a safer place, reduces the anxiety of the world a little bit, reduces the FOMO that our society has been living in forever, increases the relevance of the internet for them, and makes us a little bit more de-addicted in the way we've been using the internet. Sounds magical, isn't it? But then what is a great technology if it doesn't sound like magic? And that's what we've been on. So I welcome you all to this event. You're going to hear from some great friends and partners and colleagues and like-minded disruptors in the world that have always believed in what they thought to be true. And they've waited for the world to come around to recognize that they were true. And this is exactly what we are standing here for. So I welcome you all to this event, and we're looking forward to an exciting evening, I must say, and some great discussions. So thank you, everyone.
Great to be with you today. I'm excited to talk about how to build habit-forming brands, because we have all seen over the past few years what an impact these devices have had on our day-to-day lives. And so what I'd like to discuss is to share insights about what is it about these world-changing companies, these companies that oftentimes started out as toys, started out as nice-to-haves, started out as features of other people's products. Whose companies am I talking about? What are these big disruptors that we're talking about? We're talking about companies like Facebook and Amazon and Snapchat and Instagram, these companies that kind of came out of nowhere that were so easily dismissed the first time we saw them, and yet within the span of a few short years, they're touching the lives of hundreds of millions of users and making hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars in the process. What can we learn from these companies? What patterns can we discover so that we can learn from the best in the business? Why do we do this? Why do we want to look outside our industry to learn from others? Well, if you want to get really good at something, you don't ask your peers, you ask the best people you could find, right? If you want to be a really fast runner, maybe you go talk to Usain Bolt. If you want to be an amazing investor, maybe you learn from Warren Buffett. You don't ask the schlub down the street, you ask the best in the business. And so that's what we're going to do today. We're going to understand what are the psychological patterns that we see repeated time and time again in all sorts of habit-forming products, online, offline, enterprise, consumer web, it doesn't matter. The same psychology repeated time and time again that can help us learn how to build habits inside our products by helping users get hooked for good. Now, my first book is called Hooked, How to Build Habit-Forming Products, and it's been used over the past, over a decade now, in every conceivable industry to build healthy consumer habits. Companies like Fitbod get people hooked to exercise. Companies like Kahoot use the hook model to get kids hooked to learning. So there's all kinds of ways that we can use this same psychology to help people build healthy habits in their lives. And that's what I want to help you do today. So to do that, we have to start with what is a habit? What is this word that we're describing? Let's define it. A habit is nothing more than an impulse to do a behavior with little or no conscious thought. It's about half of what you do every single day, day in and day out, is spurred by these habits. And we can use these habits for good. I think that we are on the precipice of an age where habits that we ingrain in users' lives are no longer just going to be about gaming or social media, these frivolous activities, but we can actually spur people to action to build the kind of habits in their day-to-day lives that make them better, that connect them to each other, that help them live happier, healthier, more connected lives. And here's how we're going to do it. The way we do it is that we build into our products, into the UX of our product. And it could be offline, online, it doesn't matter. We've got to make sure that we build in a hook into that product experience. Now, what is a hook? A hook is an experience that connects your user's problem to your product with enough frequency to form a habit. Okay? And that word frequency is very, very important. The more often a user interacts with our product, the more likely they are to build a long-term habit. And to build that long-term habit, we have to make sure that each and every one of our hooks has these 4 basic steps. And you will see this pattern repeated time and time again. Once you understand the hook model, you'll see it in all kinds of products around you. The hook model has 4 basic steps. Every hook starts with a trigger, to an action, to a reward, and finally an investment. And it's through successive cycles through these hooks that our preferences are changed and that these habits take hold. So what we're going to do for the next few minutes is dive in to these hooks. We're not going to be able to cover everything in the book, but I want to give you a 30,000-foot view so that you can take this back to your companies and start designing the kind of brands and services that build healthy habits in users' lives. Starting with a trigger. What is a trigger? There are 2 kinds of them. Triggers are these calls to action. They tell us what to do next. You'll be very familiar with the first kind of trigger, external triggers. You see these every day. These are all the pings, the dings, the rings, anything in your outside environment that tells you what to do next with some piece of information. Those are called external triggers. We all know this, of course, in the advertising business. We know external triggers very, very well. But what's even more important from a habit-building perspective is to create an association with the second kind of trigger. These are called internal triggers. What are internal triggers? Internal triggers are where the information for what to do next is stored as a memory or an association inside the user's head. So what we do when we're around certain people, situations, routines, and most frequently when we experience certain emotions, prompts us to action, prompts us to take this habit. Now, the most frequently occurring internal trigger are not just emotions, they are in fact a certain kind of emotion. They are in fact negative emotions, So what we do when we're feeling dissatisfied, lonesome, bored, stressed, anxious, this is what prompts us to look for relief with the products and services that we use. Listen, there is only one reason and one reason only that we buy or click or interact with any product or service. Any product or service, there's only one reason. That one reason is to modulate our mood, to feel something different. So it's very important that you understand your internal trigger. We know this to be a fact because we know that people who are suffering from clinical depression check email more. Do you know that? Why would that be? No, it's not that email is making them depressed. That's not what's happening. But in fact, it turns out that people suffering from clinical depression experience negative valence states. They feel down more frequently than the rest of the population. So what are they doing? They're looking for relief. They're checking their device. They're looking at email more frequently than the rest of the population. But if we're honest with ourselves, we all do this. We don't have to be depressed to do this. We all do this. Let me ask you, let's do a little pop quiz here. What app or website do people tend to check when they're feeling lonely? Where do they go? Where do we go? Facebook, Instagram, somebody said Tinder? It's a different kind of loneliness, but also true. I'll count that. What about feeling unsure? Before we scan our brains to see if we know the answer, what are we doing? We Google it, of course, with little or no conscious thought. And what about between 2 and 4 o'clock in the afternoon when you have that big project you don't want to work on right now? Where do you go? You check sports scores. You look at stock prices. You check about what's going on in the news. Maybe you check YouTube. Anything to take your mind out of that internal trigger state of boredom. So what's the punchline here? What does this mean? It means that if you are going to build a habit in your consumer's life, you and everyone on your team needs to be able to articulate what is that internal trigger you are building for. You are not building products. You are satiating emotional triggers. That is what you do for a living. So you need to be able to articulate that throughout your team in order to build habits. Okay? If not, you're flying blind. You're just getting lucky. The next step after the trigger phase is the action phase. So this is where the habit is manifest. This is where it becomes a behavior. The rule with the action phase, it is defined as the simplest behavior done in anticipation of a reward. The simplest thing the user can do to get relief from that psychological itch. I'm going to show you a few habit-forming products, and I want you to notice how simple that key action is. Something as simple as a scroll on Pinterest. How easy is that? Or how about a search on Google? Or what about a quick play, hitting the play button on YouTube or Youku or any number of other platforms, just that simple action of pushing a play button on a video. Now, there's actually a formula that helps us predict the likelihood of these singular behaviors. It comes to us from a researcher at Stanford by the name of BJ Fogg. And Fogg tells us that for any human behavior B, we need 3 things at the same time. How many of you have seen this formula before? Raise your hand if you've seen it. No? Nobody. Oh, this is a game changer. Fogg tells us that for any human behavior, this is the formula for all human behavior. Your kids' behavior, your customers' behavior always requires 3 things. Sufficient motivation, that's the M. Sufficient ability, ability is how easy or difficult something is to do, and the T stands for triggers. Okay? So any human behavior requires all 3 of these three things at the same time. Motivation is the energy for action. According to Edward Deci, the father of self-determination theory, he tells us that we have this energy for action and that we have these 6 key levers that we can pull on to increase or decrease human motivation. Because all of us, we seek pleasure, we avoid pain. We seek hope, we avoid fear. We seek social acceptance, we avoid social rejection. So every bit of marketing copy, every advertisement, every television commercial you've ever seen fundamentally is manipulating these 6 emotional levers to increase or decrease motivation for an action, okay? But that's, I think, the less important part of those 3 things, motivation, ability, and trigger. What's even more important than just motivation, it's a necessary component, is ability. Ability is the capacity to take a particular action, how easy or difficult something is to do. The first rule of interaction design is the harder something is to do, the less people will do it. The easier something is to do, the more likely you are to do it. So here again, we have these 6 levers of ability, these 6 things that we can pull on to make a behavior more likely to occur based on how much time something takes, how much money something costs, how much physical effort is required. Brain cycles, this is a big one when it comes to tech products because we know the harder something is to understand, the less likely the behavior is to occur. Social deviance says that we become more likely to do something when we see other people like us doing it. And finally, non-routine says that we become more likely to do something simply for the fact that we have done it before in the past. Right? The more we do something, the easier it becomes. What's that called? It's called practice. Right? The more we do it, the easier it gets, the more likely we are to do it again in the future. So we can actually put these 3 elements on this conceptual model and ask ourselves, if you have a product or service or brand and people aren't doing the thing you've designed for them to do, they're not coming back the way you would hope, there's only 3 potential reasons why. Either the user lacks motivation, okay? High motivation, low motivation. Or the user lacks ability. If something is easy to do, it's on the far right. If something is difficult to do, it's on the far left. And it's only when the user has sufficient motivation and sufficient ability, when we have a trigger, the behavior will occur. Every single time. Online, offline, doesn't matter what your business is, every human behavior always requires these 3 elements. If you are below this red line because the user lacks motivation or more frequently lacks ability, the behavior doesn't occur. What's this gap called? What's this gap called? High motivation, low ability. This is where many of our customers live their lives. This is called frustration. I really want to do business with you, but it's really hard. It's too difficult. 9 times out of 10, when clients come to me and say, hey, how do we make our problem more habit forming? 9 times out of 10, if the problem is in the action phase, it's because it's just too hard to use. It's too much information. It's too time consuming. It's too much mental effort, too much cognitive load. We've got to make it easier for the user to do the behavior, and therefore we will see more of it. Okay? Next, the reward phase of the hook. The reward phase is where the user gets what they came for. It's where their itch is scratched a little bit. And when we talk about rewards, we have to talk about a special area of the brain. Because there is actually a way to supercharge desire. Is anybody here curious about how you can manufacture desire? Does anybody want to know how to do that? Does anybody want to know how to manufacture desire? I'm doing it to you right now. So when I took that long pause and I stopped talking for just a few seconds, many of you perked up. Some of you started waving your hands, right? You responded. Why? Because there was a bit of uncertainty. There was a bit of mystery, because the unknown is fascinating. It causes us to engage. It causes us to focus, and it is highly habit-forming. This comes from the classic work of B.F. Skinner, the father of operant conditioning. In the 1940s, he took these pigeons, he put them into what today we call the Skinner box, and he let these pigeons peck at a disc. And every time the pigeon pecked at the disc, they would receive a little reward, a little food pellet. And at first, Skinner could train his pigeons to peck at the disc whenever they were hungry. Remember, the pigeons had to be hungry. Skinner actually had to starve his pigeons. Why? Because they had to have that internal trigger. Right? If they weren't hungry, they didn't peck at the disc. Much like we can't make our users or customers do what we want them to do unless we understand their internal trigger. In this case, the pigeons were hungry. So as long as they were hungry, they pecked at the disc and they got a reward. Terrific. That's called operant conditioning. No big deal. If you have a pet at home or kids at home, you probably train their behavior. Do this, get that. Right? But one day, Skinner walks into his lab and he has a big problem. He checks his pocket and he realizes he doesn't have enough of these food pellets. He can't afford to give it to the pigeon every time. So what does he do? He gives it to them once in a while. So sometimes the pigeon pecks at the disc, no reward, no food pellet. The next time the pigeon pecks at the disc, they do get a reward. And what Skinner observes to his amazement is that the rate of response, the number of times these pigeons peck at the disc, increases when the reward was given on a variable schedule of reinforcement. Why does this happen? Because variability spikes activity in the brain, in this area called the nucleus accumbens, creating this desirous response, this wanting reflex. And so in all sorts of products that you find to be habit-forming, online, offline, doesn't matter, you will always find these three types of variable rewards. Rewards of the tribe, rewards of the hunt, and rewards of the self. Let me introduce these to you briefly. Rewards of the tribe are things that feel good, that have this element of variability, and come from other people. Best example I can think of online are things that encourage empathetic joy, partnerships, cooperation. Think about social media, right? When we use various social media apps, there's this sense of uncertainty around what we might find when we interact with these social platforms, right? Whether it's Instagram or WhatsApp, you name it, there's always this sense of social variability. The next type of variable reward is called rewards of the hunt. Rewards of the hunt are things that these things that are variable reward, that feel uncertain, but aren't about other people. These are about the search for material possessions. And in modern society, we buy these things with money. So when people think of variable rewards, they oftentimes think about slot machines, right? Slot machines have this element of variability. We're never sure what we're going to win. And it's very enticing to play one of these games of chance. But we see this translated into our digital products with the feed. Have you noticed how everything has a feed these days? Right? Why does everything have a feed? Right? Well, think about LinkedIn. Who here is on LinkedIn? Almost everybody, right? Think about the LinkedIn feed. You check LinkedIn, oh, maybe that story's not that interesting, and that's not that interesting. Oh, but maybe the third or fourth is interesting. So what do I have to do to see more interesting content? What do I have to do? Scroll, exactly. And that scrolling and scrolling use the exact same psychology as pulling on a slot machine. The same variable reward of searching and searching, hunting for that next bit of information. The last type of variable reward is called rewards of the self. These are things that feel good, that have this element of variability, but aren't about material or information rewards. They don't come from other people. These are things that are intrinsically rewarding. They feel good in and of themselves. Best example is gameplay, right? When we go online to get to the next level, the next achievement, there's something pleasurable about playing these games, right? But I know everybody here, we're all very serious business people. None of us play these games, right? But I bet you play this game every day. Your email inbox, does that look familiar? Email is the mother of habit-forming products, right? It's something we use whether we like it or not. Think about it. Email uses rewards of the tribe. Who's the email from? Is it my boss? Is it spam? I don't know. I got to check. Rewards of the hunt. What's in the email? Is it good news? Is it bad news? I don't know. It's variable, right? And then finally, rewards of the self. Trying to get to this mythical place of inbox zero by checking those messages and clearing them away. These are all examples of variable rewards of the self. So the point of the variable rewards is to scratch the user's itch. We must give them what they came for, and yet leave a bit of mystery, a bit of uncertainty around what they might find the next time they engage with a product or brand. Finally, the last step of the hook model is the investment phase. And this is the most overlooked of the 4 steps of the hook model. The investment phase is something that the user does to increase their likelihood of passing through the hook in the future. And investments do this in two ways. Two ways. The first way that investments increase the likelihood of the next pass is by loading the next trigger. So something that I did to bring myself back as a user. Not some piece of spammy marketing or as a messaging that you're sending, but something that I as the user do to bring myself back. Let me give you an example. When you send someone a message on WhatsApp, there's no immediate reward, right? There's no points, there's no badges, nothing happens when you send that message, other than the fact that you are loading the next trigger by sending a reply, right? You're expecting that reply in the form of, what's this an example of? That's an external trigger that prompts you through the hook model once again. So the first way that investments increase the likelihood of the next pass is by loading the next trigger. The second way is by storing value. Storing value is a really, really big deal. You see, in the first time in history, we are making products for markets of one. What do I mean by that? Remember this famous quote by Henry Ford? Henry Ford said, "You can have any color of Model T as long as it's black." Why did he say that? Because he was commenting on, he was making kind of a joke that, you know what's really hard to give you a blue car and you a yellow car and you a red car. He couldn't do that at the time. He had to mass produce his cars for the common person, and they were all black. Today, that's not the case, right? Today, we can manufacture cars in all kinds of colors, but now it's become even more atomized. Now we are making products for markets of one, and we're doing that because of this idea of stored value. Stored value happens when users put something into the product to make it appreciate with use. Because unlike our cars, our clothing, our couches, these things depreciate, right? Things in the physical world, they lose value with wear and tear. Habit-forming products do the opposite. Habit-forming products appreciate with use. They get better and better the more we use them. And they do this because of stored value. For example, content. The more content you upload to Google Drive or Dropbox, for example, the more valuable it becomes. The more data you give to a company, the more they can tailor that algorithm to suit your needs just for you. So if you were to log into my Instagram account, for example, it wouldn't be that interesting to you because it's been tailored based on my data. My Mint account, the more financial services I connect to it, the more valuable it becomes because of the data I'm giving this product. The more followers someone has, right? The more followers someone has, the more valuable a service becomes. So if Elon Musk said, hey, Twitter's not free anymore, okay? Everybody has to pay for Twitter now. Who's more likely to pay? Is it going to be someone with 10 followers or someone with 10,000 followers? Of course, it's going to be the person with 10,000 followers because they've stored all that value in the product. If you think about what Meta just did to Twitter, why is Meta the first real competitor? Now, everybody's heard of Threads, right? Just last week, Meta released Threads. Why did they do that? Because it was the first product that could port over followers from Instagram. That was the strategic move that nobody else could do. Mastodon couldn't do it. All the Twitter clones couldn't do it. Only Facebook could do it. We'll see if they succeed. But they knew exactly where Twitter's weak spot was. They took that investment, and now they're trying to break that Twitter habit. We'll see if he succeeds. And finally, reputation. Reputation is a form of stored value that users can literally take to the bank. So on sites like Upwork or eBay or Airbnb, my reputation on these platforms is a form of stored value that defines what I can charge for my goods and services. And how likely am I to leave one of these platforms even if a better product or service comes along? Think about that. Even if there's a better product, I'm not going to leave because I've stored all this value in the form of my reputation. So this brings me to the cold, hard conclusion that having a better product is table stakes. Silicon Valley graveyards are full of products that had great technology. It's not good enough just to have better technology. The product that wins, the product that captures the market is the one that captures the monopoly of the mind. The first-to-mind solution that we turn to with little or no conscious thought. These are the kind of products and services that change our preferences, that form these habits. It's through successive cycles, through these hooks. This is the most important slide of the presentation. If you are building the kind of product or service that you want users to form a habit, you have to answer these 5 fundamental questions. Feel free to take a picture. Number 1, what is the internal trigger that your product is addressing? Number 2, what's the external trigger that prompts your user to action? What's the simplest behavior done in anticipation of the reward? Is the reward fulfilling and yet leaves the user wanting more? And then finally, what's the bit of work done to increase the likelihood of the next pass through the hook? So before I take a couple questions, there's one more thing I'd like to discuss, and that is the morality of manipulation. I know many of you, as you were listening to my presentation, you were kind of squirming in your seats saying, hey, is this okay to do to people? Is it all right to use their hidden psychology to change their behavior? And if you had that thought, I say bravo. I think that's the appropriate humane response to learning about the power of building habit-forming products. Because let's face it, this is a form of manipulation. In fact, I would argue all design is a form of manipulation, whether it's graphic design, experience design, heck, interior design is all a form of manipulation. If it's changing people's emotions and behaviors, it is a form of manipulation. But there are two kinds of manipulation. There's persuasion, which is helping people do things that they want to do, but for lack of good product design, don't do. So if an app helps me exercise or learn a new language or whatever it might be, if it helps me do that behavior, that's persuasion. I want that. The opposite of persuasion is coercion. It's getting people to do things they did not want to do. Not only is that unethical, it's also bad for business. Because in this day and age, if you trick people, if you coerce them, not only they're not going to do business with you, they're going to tell all their friends on social media not to do business with you either. So we always want to stay on that side of persuasion, not coercion. Because let's face it, these technologies are things that people take to bed with them every night. It's the first thing we reach for in the morning before we even say hello to our loved ones. So we have to ask ourselves, what responsibility do we have as product leaders, as marketers, to use this for good? I encourage you to use habit-forming technology to help people build happier, healthier, more productive lives. And if you'll allow me to borrow from the words of Gandhi, I encourage you to build the change you wish to see in the world. Thank you very much. Do we have time for questions? Yeah? Okay, great. Terrific. We have a couple of minutes for questions?
Yes.
Okay, great.
So,
If anybody,
yes, folks, if I know it's not often that we have an expert like Nir in the room with us here in Mumbai, so if any of you have any questions, please feel free to ask him right away.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, Nir. Thanks for this lovely presentation.
Thank you.
I just wanted to understand, in my mind, there were two other things which possibly could be part of the framework what you mentioned, the hook model, and please forgive me for that. I thought maybe attachment and trust. These two are from a perspective where a consumer can be hooked to the brand.
Yeah. Trust I get. Tell me what attachment is.
Maybe psychological attachment of loving the brand, which may have either triggered something emotional behavior in me.
Got it. Okay. I understand exactly. Okay, so trust is an easy one. Trust is in the model. I put it under cognitive load. So
Okay.
if I distrust a brand, if I'm thinking, well, are they going to screw me? Are they going to put things in my basket I didn't order? Are they going to do something with my personal information? If I don't trust the brand, that's cognitive load. I have to think about it before taking the core action. It adds friction. Distrust adds friction. Increasing trust decreases friction. So absolutely, I would put that under cognitive load. Attachment is the result of the habit. You see, brands have always built attachment or brand affinity with their company. How have they traditionally done it? For the past, 150 years since mass market advertising, the way they have done it has always been by using the psychological principle of what's called the mere exposure effect. The mere exposure effect says, the more I show you a brand, the higher your affinity for it. I play a jingle, I show a logo, the higher your affinity. It works. It absolutely works. The problem is, of course, as we all in this room know, it's very expensive, right? Buying all that advertising takes a lot of money. So when you see products, Coca-Cola and Chevron and, commodity type goods, they spend a lot of money on those ads because they know that that's how they increase consumer loyalty is through brand advertising, through display advertising, by building this mere exposure effect. But let me ask you, how many commercials have you seen lately for Meta or Amazon or many of these big tech behemoths? If you look at their income statements and you look at how much money they spend on advertising, it's a fraction. It's a rounding error compared to how much big brands spend. Why is that? Why is that? Because these companies, these habit-forming brands, they don't use the mere exposure effect. They don't use it very much. What they do is they get the product to build an affinity. The product experience itself, by using the tool, this is how the habit is formed. That's how brand affinity is formed. So affinity is the result of engagement through the hook model.
Thank you.
Sure. There's one in the back.
Hey, great presentation.
Thanks.
I just wanted to ask a question about action. Have you seen any brand where the action is too hard, create such habit-forming things as well, and how
All
do
the
they do
time.
it?
All the time. Give me. Do you have a specific example in mind?
I mean, for example, Meetup is hard, right? Meetup.com, people have to go, arrive at a certain place.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
how do they do
I thought
that?
you were going to go even harder with like.
Exercise, for example,
Yeah,
like
that
weight
also
loss,
hard.
right?
Yeah. So the big mistake that folks make is either picking the wrong person to habituate or the wrong behavior to habituate. So for example, with a fitness app or a meetup product, it's not going to be the whole experience. So let's take exercise. You mentioned exercise, and there's a case study in the second edition of the book with Fitbod, which is a product that I wrote an article a few years ago that was titled, "Why Your Fitness App is Making You Fat." Because I was so frustrated by the poor quality of so many of these fitness apps that I had to write this article taking down most of them. And then somebody sent me this app called Fitbod, and I was blown away. It was amazing. And I started using it, and I got hooked to it. And so I emailed them, and I said, "This is really well done. Have you by chance read my book?" Within 30 seconds, the CEO writes me back and says, "Yes, we read your book, and we designed this product with the hook model in mind." What was their genius? The genius was this product, Fitbod, and by the way, I use it all the time. I've been using it for years, and I'm in the best shape of my life because of it. What they realize is that we can't get people to go from couch to gym. That's never going to happen. Why? What's the definition of a habit? The definition of a habit is a behavior done with little or no conscious thought. Getting up off the couch, going to the gym, doing the exercise, that is not a habit. It will never be a habit. Why? Because it requires a lot of conscious thought. It's a very effortful behavior. It's not something you can do with little or no conscious thought. So they didn't want that entire behavior. By the way, you can learn this exact lesson for any of your brands, right? Ask yourself for your brand, where is the friction point? Where is the effort, right? How can you reduce that friction? What did they do? They said, we're only going to target a certain type of person in a certain type of context. They wanted the type of person that I used to be. I would go to the gym, I'd look around, I'd see all these muscle heads who seemed to know what they were doing, and I would have no clue. But I would go and I would do a little this and I'd do a little that, and I'd have no clue what I'm doing. So what were my options? I could hire a personal trainer, that's very, very expensive, or I could keep doing silly things and get nowhere. So Fitbod went after that type of user, the user who goes to the gym and has the internal trigger, not of, ooh, I need to exercise, the internal trigger of uncertainty. That's it, uncertainty. I get to the gym, I don't know what to do. The solution is found in my pocket. This app, I open it, that's the action. The variable reward, it tells me what sets, what reps, what muscle, all that stuff I need to do, all in the app. That's the variable reward, that's the surprise element. And of course, doing the exercise itself. And then the investment is every time I plug in the data of what I just did, it loads the next trigger and tells me what to do next time I'm in the gym. So if I go on day one and I did biceps, it tells me, okay, now you should do triceps the next day. Let that muscle rest. And now I can't stop using it because I built up so much value in the product. And now I pay them every month because I stored this value. If I stopped using it, I wouldn't know what to do. I don't even know how much I can lift anymore. The app does it for me. So that's just one example. That's a full hook model, but you can take lessons for your brand. I know very few of you are in the fitness industry, but this is a very, very common problem where the action is just too difficult to do. So what are your choices? Make that action much easier. Find a customer segment that has a unique problem that you can address, and make that behavior, that habit, very distinct. Don't make it too broad. Make it a very distinct action. Okay. Maybe we have time for one more? One more? There you go. Sure.
The more you talk about habits, I'm thinking that all these organizations that have built businesses around habits, experiences, have also caused disruption, right? There were previous habits that these guys tried to break into. Is there a study or a point of view on how long does it take for these cycles to break again? Because Facebook used to be their
Right.
primary habit. Now users are not using Facebook as much as they used to.
Right.
And for every type of consumption, there is a cycle.
That's
so
right.
is there some study around it and
your
creating new
name?
habits? Rishi.
Rishi, this is my favorite question. This is a really good question. Thank you for asking that. It's a really good question. I love this question. How do you capture the competition's customer habit, right? What happens when somebody else owns a habit that you want, and you are trying to wrestle it out of them, out of their customers? It's very difficult to do. It's hard to do, but it does occasionally happen, right? Just because you have a habit now, you have to defend it. It's not going to be there forever. It is a strategic competitive advantage, for sure, right? If you think about Google, Google has what, 90% market share on search, right? How many of you, by the way, let's do a quick poll. How many of you searched with Google in the past 24 hours? Raise your hand for me. Raise your hand. Okay, look around the room, okay? How many of you searched with Bing in the past 24 hours? Nobody? One person, one ex-Microsoft employee, I'm guessing? Right? How many of you searched with, used ChatGPT in the past 24 hours to search with something? Okay, a couple people. This is exactly the situation we see happening, okay? There are by the way, look at that, right? Almost everyone here used Google. Number 2 search engine, one person used, and there's a sprinkling of a few people trying out a new product, right? Is it because, when you look at Bing versus Google, is it because Google's so much better than Bing? No. When we do head-to-head comparisons of Google versus Bing and we show people the search results, but we strip out the branding so they don't know which is which, it's a 50-50 preference split. It's a 50-50 preference split, and yet Google owns 90% of the market share. Why? Why? The product is not better. It's only because I don't know something, I Google it with little or no conscious thought. So what is ChatGPT going to do? How are they going to try and capture that customer's habit? There's 4 ways to capture the competition's customer habit. 4 ways. The first way is greater velocity through the hook. If you can send people through the hook model faster than the incumbent, that's your way in. Okay, if you can send, that typically happens with an innovation in the action phase. Most of the time that happens when there's some kind of interface change, when there's an opportunity to send people through the cycle quicker. The second way is greater frequency through the hook. So one is velocity, how fast you go through the hook. The second is how often in your day you can go through that hook. So for example, why did Zuckerberg know he had to buy Instagram? He had to buy Instagram. I remember when he bought Instagram, I was in the Valley. He bought it for $1 billion. $1 billion. And everybody laughed at Zuckerberg. He'd buy it for this stupid little photo app. Anybody want to take a guess at how much Instagram would be worth today if it was a separate company? There was a Wall Street bank that did an estimate. It'd be worth over $100 billion today. It was a deal of the century, right? He knew that Facebook was designed for web first, but Instagram was designed for mobile first. So the fact that I can check my photos and hang out with my friends online and do this stuff on my phone more frequently throughout the day meant that his product that was web first, that I had to use only on my desktop at home, I could use the phone way more frequently. So number 1 is velocity, number 2 is frequency. Number 3 is to make the reward more rewarding. Okay, and this is exactly what ChatGPT and their like are trying to do to Google right now. This does not happen often. This is very, very rare. There was a Harvard Business Review study that found that to switch a customer habit, a product can't just be better. It has to be 9 times better to escape that customer inertia. So this is the first credible threat to Google search. And of course, Google is getting into the AI and LLM game as well. But there are certain things that ChatGPT can just do a lot better than a Google search can. It can be 9 times better for certain searches. I'll give you a quick, no, I'll pass on the example. But anyway, you get the idea. It's way better. That's the third way. The fourth way is easier entry into the hook. Okay, so the fourth way to capture the customer's, the competition's customer habit is to make it easier to get into the hook in the first place. Great example here. It used to be that the most widely used enterprise software in the world used to be Microsoft Office. It no longer is. Does anybody know what the world's most frequently used enterprise software is today? Google Docs. Exactly, Google Docs. How did Google Docs beat Microsoft Office? What did they do? They had a huge advantage in that they gave out the software for free. Remember we used to have to buy Microsoft disks, right? And we used to have to install them and pay money to use the software. Where Google Docs came out, couldn't do a fraction of what Microsoft Office could do, but it had this huge advantage of if you were running a startup and you just needed a spreadsheet, or you're a student and you just needed a word processor, you could start using it instantly in the cloud. And so that's how they captured all that share. That's how they changed the customer habit. So the 4 ways to capture a customer's habit: velocity, frequency, make the reward more rewarding, and easier entry into the hook? Great question. Great. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Nir. Thank
We are an unstoppable species. We didn't stop after inventing the wheel, or the light bulb, or whatever this is. Turns out, our thirst to do more is what drives us forward. On this epic quest for more, our device screens were meant to be our companion, to help us keep up, get things done, spark new ideas, and to just grow and be the best version of ourselves. But in this fast-paced world, with an abundance of information, experiencing delightful moments is getting harder. What if everything you seek comes to you, instead of you seeking it? Score updates of your favorite team, trends that you love, news happening around you, or the number of steps you took, all of it and more, without you having to ask for it. What if screens became smarter? Glance makes it simple and joyful to keep up with the world and yourself. Glance is transforming every screen you interact with into a smart surface, made possible by the power of AI, 5G, and more. From smartphones, connected TVs, smartwatches to laptops, imagine every screen giving you a seamless experience, sparking joy and discovery at every moment, so that finally you can cut through the chaos, discover new ways to look at the world, and become the best version of yourself. Glance, enrich every moment.
You know, when we thought about this, it was very intriguing to understand, hey, what does glance, the word glance, mean in our everyday lives and in the history of mankind? I mean, if you really think about it hard, presidents made peace with each other with just one glance. Kings had wars with each other with one glance. You know, I remember that one moment, one glance where Shah Rukh in Chak De, that last penalty shootout of Chak De, in that one glance, he made the person figure out how to win that match. And how about that glance that we have in an arranged marriage setting, when you are with your future spouse, and you actually know with that one glance that, you know, she's the one or he's the one. I mean, it's a simple glance, but it is meant to be very, very important for the rest of your life, right? Or my favorite one, or the most dangerous one, since my wife is here, when the glance that she gives me in a dinner party when I'm heaping food on my plate. That's a very simple glance, but very, very powerful one. So glances can be very, very interesting. And I feel there's something about the power of glance in the way it has happened for many, many years. And we wanted to somewhat, you know, capture that. We wanted to figure out, what do we glance at the most every day? What can we do with what we glance in our day-to-day digital lives? And we said, you know, there is this phone out there, or TVs soon enough, but could we do something about it? You know, could we actually say, hey, this is so boring, it is just the time or the temperature, but what if we reimagine this? What if can we do something where we take this so-called passive surface on our phone, passive yet pristine, and make it precious for our users? Can we do something about that? And this is the quest in which almost like 6 years, we have been trying to figure out, how do we reimagine this whole surface and make every glance meaningful for our users? Imagine, each glance on your phone is not yet boring, but adds that extra bit of maybe belief or inspiration or something in your life. And we want for our users. Let me show you my phone. This is a snapshot of my phone, last 48 hours. It's a regular Xiaomi phone. And each time I press the power button, or I want to go inside, or I wake up the thing, it lights up. And, you know, it talked about the Bobby and Oppenheimer thing. I didn't know about Chandrayaan before this. It talks about quotes. my favorite guy. I mean, it's good to get that gyan from him. So it's just interesting each time it is happening. And I'm not even asking for this. I'm just discovering this out of serendipity. I can even play games between my meetings if I want to. And if I like something, I can actually go inside and watch someone live stream this or play the game or even interact with the creator out there without unlocking the phone. Now you saw a bunch of glances there. It's very important for me to call out a few core tenets of how we build glance. Each glance had to mean something. Each glance had to stand for something. This is just not a random set of things that you just saw there. It is very important for us back there, through technology, through AI, through content, through partnerships, that each glance has to stand for a few things. First tenet, each glance has to be fresh, taza, latest, live. The screen is meant to be an always-on taza thing. I can't show something from the past. And we have made sure that whatever is coming out there is absolutely fresh and live. It could be breaking news. It could be sports scores. You not missing that match moment when Rinku Singh is actually hitting those 2 sixes. It could be breaking trends, latest trends, new games. It could be the latest products out there. Everything has to be fresh. And we believe there's so much good stuff out there in the internet. Can we bring a slice of that internet, a slice of the good things of the internet, and serve it to you in a very easy manner, fresh manner? So that's what you're doing. It's people glancing, and it's becoming somewhat like a habit to what Nir was saying. It's this new consumption behavior we are noticing, and that gives us a lot of pride out there. The second one, it's very simple, and simple I feel is a fairly complex thing to achieve, right? It's simple because people are able to do these things, discover these things, without the need to unlock the phone, without the need to download an app or search something. Isn't that very powerful? It's powerful because I feel there is beauty in serendipity. And could we make that serendipitous discovery interesting and simple for our users? So it's very interesting how people are, it's much easier. The hook is easier to go into at some level to what Nir just said. There's a third one, and the most important one in my opinion. It has to be extremely premium. We felt this is like a pristine surface, and we couldn't screw up on this surface. We couldn't show crap here at all. So each glance has to be topmost quality, visually stunning and extremely premium and curated, which means it is not a UGC platform. It is not something where we can let anyone do anything. We'll always work with the best partners, few creators, few streamers, but make sure it is goddamn good. Very important for us. Very, very important for us. It's like a first-class citizen in the way we operate, but very important because it's like, I know I can give my phone, my glance phone, to my child for 30 minutes with the child mode, and I know it's safe. I know they'll not do something and land somewhere else, which is dangerous. Very important in the way we operate, so I feel it is such an important thing. Let's go to a few actual user stories and hear from them why they use Glance. What does Glance do to their lives? And just something that we curated for you guys. Can you increase the volume?
गेमिंग के लिए यूज करता हूँ।
हाँ पता है।
वही ना, स्क्रीन पे फोटोज वाला ऐप। हाँ पता है ना।
This right? Here?
मुझे ना ये वाटरफॉल सनराइज वाले पिक्चर्स बहुत पसंद है मेरे लॉक स्क्रीन पे। पहले तो मैं रोज से खुद ही चेंज करती थी, पर फिर बाद में जब से ये ग्लैंस ऐप आया है ना, तब से मैंने काम इसी पे छोड़ दिया। काफ़ी समय तक मुझे लगा कि ये शायद सिर्फ फ़ोटो चेंज करने का ऐप है, बट फिर पता चला इसमें तो बड़े सारे फीचर्स हैं। मैंने कभी शॉपिंग ट्राई नहीं की है, बट वो लाइव गेम्स ये सब ट्राई किया है। टाइम पास अच्छा हो जाता है इसमें।
बिजनेस करते टाइम सबसे बात करना पड़ता है। अभी गुजराती तो सभी समझते नहीं, बोल नहीं सकते। ज़्यादा कस्टमर्स तो हिंदी बोलते हैं और आजकल के बच्चे लोग तो अंग्रेज़ी, भाई साहब नहीं समझ में आता है। फिर मैंने सोचा सीखना पड़ेगा, फिर ढूंढा। एक दिन मोबाइल पे मैंने डिक्शनरी देखा, उसमें हर रोज़ एक एक शब्द आता है। तो सबसे पहले मैंने सीखा सॉल्यूशन माने उपाय, फिर ढूंढा ग्लूटेन फ्री। वो सब लोग बहुत पसंद करते हैं ना ग्लूटेन फ्री। मेरा अचार के लिए भी लोग पूछते हैं है क्या ऐसा। ऐसे ही हर एक दिन एक वर्ड ढूंढती हूँ ग्लांस पे। मेरे कस्टमर्स खुश, मैं भी खुश।
मुंबई के पहले 6 महीने में ना ब्रेकफास्ट में मैगी, लंच में मैगी और डिनर में भी मैगी। मैं ग्लैंस यूज़ करती हूँ, पर पता नहीं था कि उसमें रेसिपीज़ भी मिलते हैं। शायद कभी ध्यान नहीं दिया होगा। वो क्या रेसिपी थी, इजी दाल तड़का या कुछ, मेरे लॉक स्क्रीन पे। शायद कोई छुट्टी थी तो मैंने ट्राई कर लिया। फ़ोन भी हेल्थ के पीछे, बताओ। उसके बाद तो आदत से हो गई, कुछ ना कुछ बनाती ही रहती हूँ मैं उसमें से। एटलीस्ट मैगी के चक्कर से तो बाहर आई ना।
आई एम अ प्रोफेशनल एथलीट, मुझे दौड़ना पसंद है। आई जस्ट लव रनिंग, यू नो। प्रॉब्लम है जब मैं वर्कआउट करता हूँ तो स्ट्रेस हो जाता हूँ। गाने सुने, फेसबुक ट्राई किया, स्ट्रेस घटा नहीं लेकिन बढ़ गया। बीच में ग्लैंस के एक गेमिंग स्टार्ट किया। एक पजल का फोटो आया था मेरे फ़ोन के स्क्रीन लॉक पे। क्लिक किया तो इधर सारा गेमिंग का भंडार पड़ा है। बेस्ट चीज़ है कि इसे डाउनलोड नहीं करना है ना सब। फ़ोन पे स्पेस है, आसान सा गेम है, स्ट्रेस भी कम।
कर्नाटका में आपने सुना होगा एक छोटा सा डिस्ट्रिक्ट है मंड्या, मैं वहीं से हूँ। मेरे कजन्स बैंगलोर में रहते हैं। उनकी बातें सुनना बिल्कुल टीवी न्यूज़ देखने के बराबर लगता है। उन्हें सब कुछ पता था, मैं बस उनकी बातें सुन लिया करती थी। पर अब मैं अपडेटेड हूँ। ज़्यादा टॉपिक्स हैं ग्लैंस पे और मैंने बस इसको सेलेक्ट कर लिया है। बहुत ही सिंपल है ये।
I call them the humans of glance. And these are, of course, real stories retold by actors for the sake of privacy. But you get the plot. I mean, it's just amazing to see what's happening out there. What did we see there? I think we saw users experiencing moments of delight and joy each time they glance on their phone. Or out of the 100 times they glance on the phone, maybe 10 times they found those moments of joy that allowed them to do something different. We heard, I think it was Shilpa, who said it's just interesting to just watch that thing. And it is every time you glance, it is that serendipity that is important here. So moments of joy, delight, because you discover something new that you did not know existed out there. We saw Rashi, that Guju lady, feel enriched by that one word a day on glance. Just one word a day, one stock tip of the day, one maybe Shark Tank tip of the day. And it's powerful. This is an example of what is happening in Indonesia. And it's just crazy, how much you can enrich the lives of people one glance at a time. I feel very strongly about this, that it is not meant to be a negative platform. It is meant to grow people one moment at a time, one glance at a time. And if you can do this in a big way, it's outstanding at some level. So we actually saw people getting enriched. I mean, Weber talked about it in some form and shape, how it's just enriching to do that. And I think it actually inspired people. We heard that girl, Pallavi, getting inspired by cooking something new. Or the last one who said, I'm inspired by it. I don't feel small because I came from a small town. I know a lot more, I'm updated. I can actually have a conversation with my colleagues in the Bangalore office. So there's inspiration. And of course, things like these do come on glance. So I think it's super exciting what it means to our users. This is special. These emotions, and you talked about emotion, these emotions that we are seeing people have is what drives a lot for us. So I feel super strong about it, that if we can do this for millions and millions of users, one glance at a time, it's very, very powerful. Another dimension, while you saw what users are feeling as a change, there are some partners who have really leveraged the power of glance, saying, hey, I want to work with you guys because it's something interesting happening out there. You guys are onto something. So we had Jio Cinema during IPL, this IPL, where almost 200 million, almost 20 crore log Indians discovered live moments of IPL on glance. That one coin toss that you didn't know is going to be interesting, that last 3 overs where Dhoni is killing it, and you would have discovered it next day in the press or Twitter. 20 crore Indians managed to discover these special, interesting moments on glance, went inside, watched that clip for 2-3 minutes, the couple of overs, and then if they had the JioCinema app, they went in and saw the whole thing if they wanted to. Very interesting out there. This is a special one. I mean, we actually streamed Lakme Fashion Week, and we had almost 10,000 people who actually visit Lakme Fashion Week offline, and there were like 50 lakh people on those 5 days who experienced live streaming of this on glance, went inside, interacted with the models, backstage, green room, whatnot. I think this is, it's like, why should the VIPs have the fun? People had front row seats out there. There's an example of you being on the front row. Of course, and then there's there's some crazy stuff happening. You discover a trend, you think about Korean K-pop and K-beauty and whatnot, and you go in and you interact with that Korean beauty creator from Jaipur who understands K-beauty, and you understand that, you spend time, get inspired. A lot of this is happening. A lot of big creators and brands are now working with us to say, hey, let's do this. This is so interesting. This is so cool. And lots happening of this kind. Glance has now become the largest gaming platform in this country, where millions of these users in their spare time would actually come in, discover games, play games, and in this case, there is watch live game streaming, Twitch style. Now, this is we did this all-women PUBG tournament in Indonesia and in India. 1,000 women streamers streamed and played online and talked about it in their language. And people, like 25 million people actually discover these things and watch it. This is like as big as any esports out there. So it's huge in terms of how users are ending up using this. This one is my favorite, actually my favorite. I'm sure you can guess this, but last year, for 3 days in the night, 10 p.m. to 1 a.m., we streamed the best DJs from Goa on glance. We said, what will it mean to do that? And the DJs were streaming. There were 600 people dancing in that club in Goa. And there were 6 lakh people on glance, engaging with those guys, enjoying that music, asking for songs. So that's the power of how people are doing this. And of course, I mean, in all senses, this is ultimately a DJ or a creator out there. So I want you guys to see that video. It's not coming, but the DJs were cool. It is so real. It's so real, it's fascinating. And beyond all the users I talked about, it's great to have, it's so good to have these creators, these streamers, these DJs, We now have bakers and mentalists streaming on Glance and making money and having popularity. I mean, that gives us a lot of things, and we are actually on a path to create the largest number of what I call as the creatorpreneurs in this country and globally. So as we come here, as we come to that whole thing, I hope you get a sense of the core behind Glance. It's something we built imagining that this could change the world. I don't think we talk enough about it. And this is a quest for everyone to understand more about what this could mean. Why are people using Glance? What are they doing on Glance? What does it change in their lives one glance at a time, meaningfully? And that's what we've talked about it. As I wrap up my session, I have one more last thing to share, I mean, on behalf of the 3,000 people at InMobi and Glance who have built this for the last 15 years and slogged like crazy, I think it's important to say that we are absolutely proud of what we are doing. Absolutely proud of being the first unicorn out of India, first profitable unicorn out of India, but more proud now that we are doing world-class consumer innovation out of India and making it a global company. We are very clear. Glance is already global. 500 million users are using it, and in the next couple of years, 1 billion users will use Glance globally, including in the US. And that's something which I feel is an extreme matter of pride for all of us that we can actually do so. Yeah, please soak it in, because this is what drives most of us. Why should Google and Facebook and ByteDance only come from the US and China? Why can't India produce Google and Facebook and Amazon? So we are on that journey. We are absolutely on that journey, and I want you guys to join us in that journey. I want you to support us in this journey, to maybe encourage us in that journey. And if possible, grow your businesses in this journey. Whether you like it or not, at least you can encourage and support and, maybe cheer for us in this journey. So I have one last question for you guys. You just saw the power of a glance, and back to I'm not thinking about my wife's glance again in that dinner plate setting. What do you want to do for your businesses through the power of a glance? Think about it. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Piyush. So I think before the next session, I'd like to ask one question to all of you, which is, how many of you used Midjourney in the past few months? Anybody? Okay, I can see a few hands. How many of you used ChatGPT? Okay, I can see some more hands. I know that all of this makes us feel like, oh my God, we're such great, amazing AI experts, but our next speaker, Ian Anderson, who's the VP of Data Science at Glance, has been living and breathing AI for decades now. So he's here to talk about a very special topic, which is demystifying AI for marketers. So let's please give him a great round of applause.
बार बार देखो हजार बार देखो कि देखने की चीज है हमारा दिल रुबा डाले हो.
So after a few drinks later, I'll get my guitar out and I'll kind of try and charm you. But that's just a little loosener. And really, the next thing I'm going to show you is to basically destroy my dignity. And there is a reason why I'm going to try and make the Mona Lisa sing. I'm not going to use any sound, but I'll just look a fool. But it will all make sense a little bit later. Okay, here we go. The hair is there. You gotta fight for your right to What you see here is that the idiot over here is kind of, I'm creating what's called a driving video. And so what's happening is my motion is being kind of captured, and then I'm able to make the Mona Lisa move in that way, and to actually kind of then animate, and so you can see this kind of weird, kind of quirky effects. And we're going to come back to that, and the reason I wanted just to show that is really just get the dignity out of the way at the start, and there's also just kind of some of the things which look really professional and really cool later on. You can actually see, well, hang on, this idiot did this in a few minutes, kind of like, let's just imagine like how much money we can save and time we can kind of save. So the next thing.
Hello everyone, I'm a virtual avatar. In the previous slides, we have seen some examples of generative AI that can be stitched together to create unique and delightful experiences for consumers. Although I could replace Ian and give this talk myself, I will hand over to him as he will only get grumpy if I don't.
It's true, I would have
Ian,
done.
I'm so sorry to interrupt you. I think we're having a little difficulty hearing you, so maybe we'll just have this person help you with the audio, and then we'll get back right to it. I know we thought that when we are in physical events, we wouldn't have sound issues, but looks like we can't help this sort of a thing.
I could use that.
You want to use this?
Yeah, I'll use that. I'm supposed to be the technology guy. And, I have to multitask now. I'm going to have to press buttons and so. Okay, so what you saw there was a virtual avatar. So that's like a synthetic thing. I passed some text to it, and I told it to kind of like say something. And it was also using voice synthesis, so I could kind of change the voice that was kind of shown and how that was kind of heard. And so generative AI, I think unless you've been under a rock, you're bound to have kind of come across this before. But the idea is that I wasn't allowed to include any maths at all in this, although I did try. We simply say, there's some prompt, there's some way of asking some machine learning model to do something and generate an output. And so the kind of most common ones I think people will have seen are images. And so you'll see here the text prompts, basically a painting of a fox. But then the really interesting part is you can have in a particular kind of style, and you can produce these kind of beautiful kind of pictures. Now, this type of art has been around for quite some time. It's just the difference was the output was really, really crappy. And now it's really, really good, and it's everywhere and blows people's minds. And you'll see this kind of like a Mid-Journey, and you see DALL-E, and all of these kind of tools, they became mainstream, and so everyone is using them. And I think that was one of the things that really sort of like happened over the last 12 months. Although these technologies have taken years to build and develop, they suddenly were very, very good, and people started to recognize the actual kind of power of them. And so what we'll briefly do is have a look at three sort of like generative AI things from industry that I was kind of passed and asked to sort of talk about. And some of it's not actually got any AI in at all, and some of it is really kind of interesting. So let's kind of have a quick look. So what you see here is a campaign that Heinz kind of ran, and it was to say, what does ketchup look like to AI? Now, this is kind of like fascinating because all of these can be kind of created in incredibly kind of quick time. And you can obviously, like, say, a ketchup bottle, probably in a swimming pool in the bottom left corner, and you've got these other kind of designs there. But if you sort of look at this and you haven't had too much to drink, you'll start to notice that all of the text is bonkers. None of the text is real. And every word that's there, and that's because of the way that AI is kind of doing this, is it's saying, well, it looks like it from a distance, squint, drink more. That's kind of a Heinz tomato ketchup bottle. But the reality is that generative AI in images at this stage doesn't handle text at all well. And just to sort of, the one emphasis that I really want to kind of get through to people today is, this was like 15 seconds to say, hey, can you give me some more examples that I kind of just ran to say I could kind of include alongside there, and just to show you kind of creating a spaceship. Now, going on to these kind of next examples, this is an absolutely wonderful advert from Coca-Cola. And this is one of these cases where there is some sort of AI in here, but there's actually a hell of a lot of like incredible video editing work, and that's really where this kind of the magic is that's kind of happening here. So we can see this kind of beautiful kind of piece there being kind of brought to life. And you could think back to sort of like when you saw the Fool in the Mona Lisa, just as some of these kind of aspects and how these tools are kind of working there. But just something that's kind of incredible at the moment, so thoroughly encourage everyone to kind of check it out here. But the main point is that actually there's a hell of a lot of video editing. That's really where the magic is. The amount of kind of ML and AI in there is not actually that kind of great. But to be clear, that's not taking anything away. It is absolutely phenomenal. This next one is from Virgin Voyages, and they've kind of hired Jennifer Lopez as their kind of like chief fun officer. And so I sent this to say, hey, Ian, this is kind of like some amazing AI that has come done here. And you see this guy there? He was just kind of mimicking the face movements, like kind of like I was at the start with the kind of Mona Lisa. But again, the reality was that this is just shot and just a normal video, and it's just kind of edited together, and they just kind of make it look like they've actually got Jennifer Lopez actually kind of being sort of like almost like in a deep fake style here. And the point is that you can create these incredible things that don't necessarily need to kind of have AI in there. It's just kind of things that are kind of going on at the moment that are being kind of created. And I really just want to touch upon content creation in 2023. And basically it's to say, if you think of this like a recipe, you've got all of these different components there. They're no longer sort of gated behind just access to just a few kind of people have these tools. Voice synthesis got really, really good. And you can clone voices, and you can kind of have voiceovers, and you could just, you know, it's incredible. Whereas in the past, it was always like sort of robotic tones, and it was just kind of like, okay, that's kind of cool, but, you know, it doesn't sound real. It doesn't sound engaging. Whereas now, it is real, and it's really incredible what you can kind of do there. Image generation, obviously, everyone's kind of seen this. In terms of the text generation, the large language models, the chat GPTs, GPT-4, and remember, it's only ever going to kind of get better. So if you want to kind of generate kind of different kind of copy, you can kind of do that. We saw some avatars and kind of at the start here, and chatbots, and music creation and kind of video creation are sort of two themes which are coming, but the music's going to be really complex, and which we'll cut onto later, and video's hard and uses a lot of compute, but all of these components are there, and so really what you need to think about, what you need to think about is the human imagination about how you will actually kind of stitch these things together and what you would kind of create. And so here's a quick one that I would do almost on my day job. And basically we take, say, like a text article, which
Manchester
could be some kind of
United
story.
has named Bruno Fernandes
And
as their new
what we
captain,
can do is
replacing
we can
Harry
extract
Maguire.
the salient points from this.
Fernandes has
and then
been
we
a
could
key
kind of
player for
start
the
to
team since
identify
joining in
images, but
2020
in an
with
automatic
64
fashion,
goals and
which
54
would look
assists
good
in
sort of like as a
185 games
video,
for the club.
and stitch these together.
He has
And
also
so we
won
can kind of
several
create
awards,
these,
including 2
converting a
Sir Matt
story
Busby Player of the Year awards and
basically
4
into
Premier
an
League
interactive
Player
video
of the Month awards.
without actually just by
Despite
using
losing the
those
Europa
components
League
which we saw on
final
that kind of previous
2021,
slide. So the implications for you to sort of really kind of consider is that your costs are going to be significantly lower in terms of, I'm not to say this is cheap, but it's just like the way in which you can kind of go about prototyping. You can suddenly have hundreds of different variations of things. You could kind of say, I want to kind of see, well, what would this kind of look like if I'm promoting some particular kind of trainer? I could kind of develop a whole raft of different kind of options, showing different kind of ways to actually position and show that. You could have personalization in terms of saying, like, you could actually say out to any individual person's kind of name. And so the kind of the wonderful kind of Cadbury advert that had the kind of, again, it's the voice cloning that took place there with the voice synthesis for adding in the kind of the local shops and local towns, again, was just kind of made possible because those components which we talked about before are there. And then just the quality of the content. So these are sort of very, very kind of key points, but I wanted to kind of really give you some practical kind of tips. So the main thing to think about is, like, what are the limitations of the AI? Because it could be that you're trying to kind of use something with a large language model, but actually the kind of the coverage of the particular language you wish to use is very poor. It might be like when we talked about you trying to put text in images, as we saw for this Heinz examples, it's poor. So really you want to try and work with someone who can give you a bit of advice to say, where are you going to kind of like struggle because the AI has some shortcomings. Say, avoid real time. So that when the actual kind of little virtual avatar at the start, that took about 17 minutes to render. You could probably get it down to a couple of minutes, but it still takes time. So you want to try and create the illusion to have these kind of like wonderful experiences, but you really do want to try and avoid having these kind of real time because there's a lot of kind of compute that's going on kind of behind the scenes. And this really, as kind of cheap as AI can be, you can also be extremely expensive. If you wanted to kind of like send like deep fakes to millions of people, the actual compute there will also cost you millions of dollars. And so you need to kind of think about exactly what you're going to try and do, what tricks you can kind of do within there in terms of how your experience, which you can kind of generate, is going to be able to sort of like shape to say that you could, sorry, just bear with me one second. The next thing, I'll come back to the understanding compute, but making it invisible. So also kind of behind the scenes, you might actually be kind of leveraging sort of like your chat GPT to generate you some kind of marketing copy to do something in a more efficient manner. And it doesn't necessarily need to be the kind of the core feature that's actually kind of shown in the actual kind of experience and the marketing which you're kind of developing to people. And the final one is this kind of ethical and legal kind of consideration. So you should really, sort of, wherever possible, try and make sure people know when you're kind of like using AI, so that you don't kind of like try and trick people, because no one wants to kind of be tricked by this. And so this is one of the challenges that's always there with kind of deep fakes, and you can kind of clone voices. Should you, you need to kind of consider exactly how you're putting that in front of your kind of consumers. The next thing I just wanted to kind of call out is just a trend that's kind of emerging, because there obviously is kind of hesitancy and kind of concern about some of the legal issues in terms of like copywriting and how things can be kind of used. But here's an example of Adobe's kind of tool, Firefly, which can allow you to sort of generate images. They are actually kind of providing you with indemnification, so that if there was any copyright claims, they would indemnify you for that. And so we're seeing a lot of this type of, as much as you're seeing the kind of the legal claims coming up against the likes of OpenAI, you are seeing other companies trying to position this in a different way. The other thing I wanted to kind of put on people's radars is that just because technology can do things, there's no rule book. And so James Dean, unfortunately, passed away obviously many, many years ago, but he could still now be brought back in terms of a digital clone. He could kind of appear in a movie. There's nothing to kind of like stop it. The technology is kind of all there. Should you do this? How should you do this? Is this kind of like wonderful to kind of see, you know, custodians of the estate, etc., how this should be kind of used? There is no sort of like rule book for this. This is kind of, you know, obviously having to be like established and fought out now. I also thought it was kind of like timely that when we sort of think about how Hollywood and the special effects kind of industry, and like, oh, the special effects in this movie are fantastic, they're great. And then suddenly maybe they've got a little bit too great, because now obviously there is the main kind of point is around the kind of streaming revenue share. But now also kind of thinking about like, well, what should you do? Should you actually kind of allow the AI to have this kind of play? And so one of the things you really need to kind of consider is like, what's the experience that you're going to kind of generate using generative AI, and where it's going to sit and where it's going to kind of be positioned, because there is a very real human disruption in that side. And there were two things I just wanted to also touch upon. One is to talk about music is coming this year in terms of generating music. So as a little clip I generated here with a little brief, which you can see above. And you'll hear it in the background. So that was just a kind of nice little clip, like, you know, you could use that now. That's kind of been created. It's kind of like out there. But the thing is that there's actually a lot that could kind of be done with kind of music, but it's going to be a bit of a minefield kind of legally in terms of like sound alike. And so I think we're seeing a little bit of hesitancy in terms of like releasing that. But this is something that's just kind of going to increasingly come this year. And the next one. Okay, so this is a key one, really emotion and the personality. So you could all create a kind of like a standard chatbot to kind of represent your brand, to kind of interact with your consumers. But you really need to kind of consider what's the sort of personality, the emotion, how is that kind of representing your brands. And there's kind of a very scary sort of a time coming to us in the future where people will be manipulated by chatbots because they can learn about how you interact, and they could kind of choose to say, I'm going to give you a kind of a particular experience based upon how you're kind of interacting with me, and that could be kind of like for good, but equally that could be used to kind of manipulate someone. So I think that this is kind of a really key thing that's happening. There's a lot of work at the moment on personalities and in the emotions within chatbot, from the likes of kind of DeepMind competitors to kind of OpenAI. So I just wanted to sort of like really just leave that one as something that's kind of you'd need to think about in terms of your brand and the products which you're representing. And so the three kind of final anecdotes here are that basically don't really kind of think of generative AI as a luxury. It's kind of a necessity, and it is actually kind of available for all. It has been kind of commoditized, all of those components which I was touching on. And so the fact that these are kind of are available, there's nothing to stop you sort of using these sort of like straight away. I'm sure you're probably already doing this, but the key thing here is your imagination as to what you'll do with this and how you kind of create these kind of the recipes for these kind of wonderful experiences. But don't force it. Do something that's kind of natural, that works well for your kind of brand. And thank you so much for your time. Cheers.
So before Ian gets off the stage, I just want to request all of you to, give Ian a very warm applause, because Ian has flown down all the way from the UK, and he's also a very new father, and I've just sort of begged him to come down all the way for us, and he obliged. So thanks so much again, Ian. It was a lovely, lovely session. Next up, we actually have, we've been talking about a lot of, things in terms of AI, in terms of habit-forming products, and a lot of theory, right? And a lot of interesting concepts. But at the end of the day, what does that translate for you as marketers in the room? So to explain that and talk about that, we actually have our next speaker, Vasuta Agarwal, who's the Chief Business Officer for the Consumer Platform Advertising at InMobi. Welcome, Vasuta.
So I think, to just wrap up some of the stuff that we've been talking about, we talked about habit-forming brands from Nir. We talked about the power of a glance for consumers. And then we talked about the role that AI is playing in disrupting marketing and shaping the way forward. In the next couple of minutes, we will talk about, just how this power of glance is being used by brands to bring their brands and products to life. We will obviously talk about, some case studies and also, what we are doing in terms of, leveraging some of the user love that Piyush earlier talked about in his session, right? How those humans of glance are, shaping also the way for marketers and brands to leverage glance. So welcome to the age of the one-click consumer, right? What does that mean in the context of glance and in the context of brands? If you look at the typical consumer journey today on any phone, there are 8 clicks that you need to get to any piece of content. You first unlock your phone. You then scroll and try to find the right app that you want to go to. You click, you open the app. Then within the app, you have to then search for either the article or the video that you want to watch or consume. You again scroll to then click on the right piece of content or video. And finally, you hit either play or read or even buy if it's an e-commerce website to finally get to your final action, right? Which is watch, play, watch, read, or buy. So this is an 8-click consumer journey. And this is what, earlier we were talking about. This is the current user behavior when it comes to content consumption. This is the current user habit when it comes to content consumption. And on Glance, what we're doing is we're trying to disrupt that current consumption of content, that current habit that users have of consuming content. And what Glance therefore gives you is a seamless, one-click consumer experience to get to almost any content that you want. That content could be gaming, live, news, sports, entertainment, and many, many more things, right? Because what we do see is that as you go into the next sort of slide, We have almost 200 million users today in just India who are consuming content on Glance. They're spending 25 minutes a day on their phones, on Glance, in a single day, right? Each of these users. They're consuming this content in the language of their choice. That's extremely important in a country like India where you have so many languages, right? So in a language of their choice, and you saw earlier in the Humans of Glance video that almost each of those users were speaking in their native language. And 18 categories, right? We just talked about 5, but really 18 categories of content that we offer. And all of this is, sort of personalized by the user. They can choose all of this. So it's really giving a very personalized, one-click, seamless content consumption experience to users and disrupting the current habit that we have of consuming content through an 8-click journey. So if you look at this as a brand or a marketeer today, there are really 7 ways that you can tap into this power of Glance. The first, of course, that you've been seeing so far is the lock screen, where you have 200 million monthly active users spending time on the lock screen. But as you go further down into that journey on Glance, you have the lock screen feed, where each user consumes more than 10 cards of content in a single session, right? 10 cards in a single session. The next, if you look at the destinations, you have trends, right? It could be fresh news, trending fashion, so any kind of trending content. And here we see users spending almost 2 minutes, right, just on this content category of trends, news, and fashion. The next is gaming, right? I think we talked earlier about gaming. On gaming, we see 75 million monthly active users, right? Monthly active users just coming on gaming on Glance. And you saw a lot of our earlier, consumer videos talking about how gaming has become such a phenomenon, the kind of, de-stress, the kind of, time pass, people called it, that it offers. So gaming on Glance is becoming a very, very big phenomenon. The next is live. I think we talked a lot about live. We talked about, how live is becoming the next sort of trend on Glance. And we see users already starting to spend, more than 5 minutes a day on live shows. And this is, just increasing as we speak, right? We launched live on Glance maybe just 3 months back, and already we see users spending more and more time on live as a trend. Shop, I think users talked about, some of them have started shopping on Glance, and we're already driving about 1 lakh transactions a day. 1 lakh transactions a day are happening on Shop on Glance. And then sports. I think earlier we talked about it, but sports, during IPL, we saw 128 million users come and watch any kind of IPL moments, live scores, highlights, behind the scenes, all kinds of things related to IPL during the IPL season. So these are the 7 sort of, places that you can really tap into the power of Glance. And it's the true power of lock screen when it comes to brands and marketeers. And if you look at Glance, it's truly a platform that can work across the marketing funnel, right from awareness to consideration to action. And we call it, in the framework of impact, engage, and promote. And we'll quickly walk through some examples of how different brands have leveraged Glance. So we talk about Airtel, right? How Airtel created impact by tapping into the power of AI on Glance. So this particular campaign was about Airtel's international roaming offers, where they, actually used AI creatives to personalize the creatives into different destinations based on, where users wanted to go, whether it was US or Singapore or Dubai, based on users' age, users' gender, because every tourist behavior is different, right? So they tapped into the power of AI on Glance and completely sort of, tailored the creatives to individual preferences of each of the users. I think we talked about a market of 1 earlier, and this is what Glance was able to do, tapping the power of AI for Airtel. Coke, this is a great example of personalization, and this was from Diwali last year. Sorry, if you go back to the previous slide, where, when people were coming out of the pandemic, the first Diwali after the pandemic, people really wanted to connect with their friends and family. And what Coke did is that they used Glance to allow people to, send personalized greetings to their friends and family. And they used, these special edition figurines, which were, attuned to Indian culture. And these greetings then went out to, family and friends. And it created great engagement from a user lens. And it was a very interesting way to use personalization on Glance. Let's look at this example. This is a great, example of interactivity and the power of interactivity on Glance. This was Netflix. And what they did is that, before their show Ranveer versus Wild, I don't know how many of you watched it, they actually allowed users to experience the adventure of the wild with Ranveer, right? Creating that hook, that interest for users to say, okay, they took inputs from users that, how would you navigate the wild? What would you eat? What would you wear? And through that, created that interactivity where users were then, sort of involved with the show already. And as a final, call to action, they could then just go to the Netflix app or download it and, get started. So again, a very interesting use case, bringing to, life the power of interactivity on Glance. And finally, I think this example was talked about earlier, where the power of scale, of course, comes into play because we are, sitting on, 200 million users scale in India, was, for JioCinemas, where during the IPL, we brought these IPL moments to the lock screen and actually were able to drive, app installs as a behavior after users had watched different content on IPL. So the interesting part here is not just about scale, but how, watching content clips, watching those interesting moments creates a hook for people to, go and take a certain action. In this case, installing the JioCinemas app or opening the JioCinemas app. So, some interesting examples of how brands are using the power of Glance to really bring their brand to life. I'll just end it with, the power of Glance. I think today we've talked about it lies with consumers. It also lies with marketeers and essentially lies with, each of you. So thank you all very much, and we'll move to the next session.
So we're actually now on the final session for tonight, and the only thing that's keeping you guys away from, the bar that's right outside and here, this room is basically just this final discussion. And I spent a lot of time thinking about how do I introduce this panel. And honestly, when all these names are essentially brands themselves, I really don't think there's very much that I could say. So please put your hands together to welcome the icons of our industry. We have Shraddha Jain, we have Tanmay Bhat, we have Prasoon Joshi, and we have the most amazing host, Janice Sequeira.
Okay, guys, to start off, I thought to make things interesting, I thought we should play a game. Yeah, of course. Easy, na? Low-hanging fruit.
Yeah,
okay?
Let's do it.
Yeah. So the game I've come up with is a game called Don't Think. I've written down really random sentences, okay? These are not intellectual questions by any measure. And I want you to say the first thing that comes into your mind. No thinking. There are no right or wrong answers. Just the first thing that pops into your mind.
Oh,
Prasoon sir's looking a little nervous. He's like,
Very
"Pata nahi
unique
kya
game."
पूछेगी?" Prasoon sir, where's your mic? Achha,
The last time this game was played, Anjali found out Anjali and Rahul were lovers in Kuch Kuch Hota Hai. So you might find out something very interesting about me and Tanmay. Record everything. Either jo bhi record karo. Frame में आ जाएंगे ना दोनों अगर यहाँ बैठती मैं तो.
Guys, see what's happened now? We've had like at least 1 hour backstage to get to know each other really, really well. Yeah. So now these in-jokes are just going to happen. You guys have to deal with it. Okay, who wants to play first? Chalo, first tell me that. कोई तो हाथ ऊपर करो.
I'll go first and set the bar really low. Let's do it.
I'm
happy
so
to set the bar
modest,
really low.
so modest. Yeah, okay. Tanmay, ready?
Ready.
Make eye contact.
I'm making eye
Think
contact.
that the lights have dimmed and we're getting into this.
Why
like,
not dim it actually? Because ऐसे चुभ रहा है ना आँख में laser treatment हो रहा है मेरा. थोड़ा कम कर सकते हैं तो कर ही लेते हैं. Like, माहौल बनाओ माहौल.
Oh, mahal. Oh, you just used my word today. Mahal. Okay. Okay, Tanmay, mahal create हो गया?
Ji.
Okay, ready? No right or wrong answers. First thing that comes into your mind. How do you say Russian in crocodile?
How do I say Russian?
How do you say crocodile in Russian? I fucked up. Oh, are we allowed to drop F-bombs? Okay, yeah. Quickly, just make up a word.
Crocodile. I don't know. That's my attempt at a
Terrible.
Russian accent.
Okay, don't think again. Look at me. Huh. What does your voicemail message say?
Hey, why are you using this outdated technology?
What do I look like?
Janice Sequeira, I've known you for very long.
Sing me a song.
एक लड़की भीगी भागी सी. Because you got wet today, right? Before you came here, you said Bombay was raining and all that.
I mean, guys, that sentence in any context,
I knew this game would get me in trouble at some point.
Last question.
All right.
Make up a new superhero name.
Quickly. Ad-Man.
You know what? When you said you were going to set the bar low, Tanmay, I thought
it.
you were just being like modest and like, वो होता है
No,
कि
no,
मैं underperform बोल दूंगा और फिर मैं overperform करूंगा.
एक बार जो तन्मय ने commitment कर दी.
वो
Yeah.
किसी की नहीं सुनता.
Listen, I've learned that in front of CMOs, you want to set the bar really low first, so you can over-deliver later.
Up from there.
How many CMOs here? Come on, put your hands up, guys.
There's
Seriously?
no CMO here? All right, see you guys later.
Okay, fine. How many marketing people here?
We
Guys,
all
put
are
your hands
marketing
up ना.
people.
क्या इतना शर्म से मतलब हाँ. Okay.
All right, 3 or 4.
All of us.
How many people working with? Forget it, Janice. Why you want to know how many? Okay, Prasoon, sir, you ready? Or should I go to Shraddha first?
That'll be very interesting. Yeah.
Huh? Ready? Okay. What's the worst thing to put in coffee? No thinking. Come on, ये जल्दी वाला game है.
Sugar.
Okay, wow, sugar.
I was going to say Karan. This would have been a good question for me.
This is like Tanmay is like मैं दूसरों का better जवाब दूंगा. Okay. What's the slogan for cats?
Cats.
Ah!
Good, yeah, that's coming from there.
Not bad. Yeah, they said we should be interactive and all. Very good.
Very good.
Who said meow? 10
Amazing.
points. 10 points.
I would be source agnostic, yeah?
Sir, what? People will start Googling right now. Tanmay just did. Okay. In a world without Coke, fill in the blanks. Thanda matlab? Someone in the audience. Thanda matlab? Very good. Baraf, good answer. I'll give that 10 points. Okay. Make up a cool new movie title.
Cool new.
Kuch bhi?
Cool new.
Cool new. Sir, थोड़ा बाहर वो थोड़ा अभी.
Said make the cool new movie.
Yeah, okay, done, sir. मेरे ही सवाल में मुझे फंसा दिया.
हर सवाल का जवाब वही है.
By the way, this game is amazing. I
know,
say.
right?
Amazing.
Yeah,
game.
Great warm up.
Yeah, great. Who invented jam? Make up an answer, sir. The whole answers are made up.
Traffic.
You know, I feel like the stand-up on the stage has been changed. Okay, Shraddha. Now, please, just look in my eyes. You don't have to look at the audience or anything. Fast answers I want, okay? Last. What's in your pocket?
Barf.
Wow. What would AiyyoShraddha's corporate slogan be?
Pyramids.
Where do you go when you need to cry?
Bathroom में तो नहीं. Stage पे.
Stage. Impromptu performance. Complete the sentence. Mangalore and Bombay are cool because dash.
Because of me.
Ooh. And finally, make up a cool new word. And don't say cool new.
Vladimir Moscow, alligator or barf.
The first answer should have been there.
That's a pretty long word, I must say.
Yeah. It's what should have been the answer for how do you say crocodile in Russian?
Yeah.
Crocodile.
Crocodile.
Okay, but guys, we're here to talk about content and we're here to talk about how content has evolved over the years. So Prasoon sir, I'm going to look at you first because of course you have the most amount of experience among all of us in this room possibly, and that is not to say that you're old. No, not age shaming at all, sir. But I just wanted to understand from you starting off, we know that our audience is changing. We know that platforms are changing. We know that the way we're consuming content is constantly changing, right? But as someone who's seen all of these platforms, these mediums change, our habits change, what do you think are certain things that have stayed common and will never change and should maybe never change?
Change, first of all, always happens.
Hanji.
The difference today is that the speed at which the change is happening. I think the speed is something which is the most unique. The amount, the breakneck speed at which the change is today. See, there was a good quote from Mahatma Gandhi and Rabindranath Tagore about speed, where they vilified speed. They thought that, and that's time, say, contextually at the time of Industrial Revolution, when they talked about this speed is going to be the biggest deterrent to value system, and Gandhiji was very concerned about speed. He was not a great fan of speed. He in fact talked about slowness and that time. Today, it's inevitable the way things are going to change. The difference is, at least you could absorb that speed at that time. Today, the way the change happens, before even you can understand the technology is actually gone. The fad of last year is nowhere today. You know, so there are so many things. I remember last year in Cannes we were talking about so many new apps and so many new technologies and platforms. 1 year down the line, some of them have disappeared. What has stayed constant is a consumer deep down still needs to be rewarded for whatever do you do with them. Whichever platform you get them to, whichever you want to show them an ad, you want to converse with them, eventually a certain reward is required.
Payoff.
There is a certain payoff, a certain reward is required. Another very important thing which would never go is sense of belonging. People think that, there's a lot of individualism, people are getting cut off from, people are getting isolated and only connected to their technology. But through technology, they are also making tribes. So there is a sense of belonging which is always there in part of human structure. So in marketing, you should, yes, there will be individualism, but the individualism will also take you to some tribe where something collective is happening. You might not be that much of a family person, but there is something you have created for yourself where you belong. You talk about, micro-influencers today. Yeah. Now, what are micro-influencers? These are deep, small groups and they're influencers. So, एक तरफ आप कहते हैं कि एक ज़माना था हम कहते थे कि आपका जो कम्युनिकेशन है, ऐड है, वो कितना मास है. आज हम कहते हैं कितने पास है.
Talia. What a line, sir.
So that's personalization you're talking about. So, well, we can keep talking about these things as we speak. But I think there are certain things which will stay constant, that eventually all of us are human beings. And eventually we are somewhere anchored. Somewhere deep down we are anchored into something. If there is a decision making has to be done today at this moment, where the decision is. That's why we're talking so much about AI. Where a decision making and anchoring of it is not very clear to your head.
Yeah.
Well, versus a human where where it's anchored, where eventual decision will come from. Where would this person go eventually? And that's somewhere we are subliminally, all of us are linked. That Jungian subconscious where we connected in some level. If I'm speaking a language and I'm assuming you are understanding, because somewhere deep down we have common frame of references and we are connected at some level. And the decision making is also happening like that. So we can trust each other because we know we are anchored somewhere which is of common good.
Sense of community in a sense, where you feel like you have to belong.
So that will never go away. Whichever form it is, it goes digital, it goes super digital, but there is some connection we all are seeking.
No, and it's fair, and we've seen that with so many brands, with so many platforms, where you feel like it's like, I'm part of a cool gang, or I'm part of this, and like, I get it. I want to be here. Shraddha, Tanmay,
you can be a counterpoint. You're saying the cool is not cool anymore. So I want to be fuddy-duddy, that's more cool. See, the people are taking counterpoint but their connection still. A counterpoint is also a point.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah. No, Shraddha, Tanmay, please feel free to jump in. Ye koi formal conversation thodi na hai.
And I think that holds good for content creators as well. So today we are all building communities. We don't make, when we are making content, ये नहीं कि पूरी दुनिया को पसंद आना चाहिए. हमको पता है कि ये हमारी community है, हम content इसलिए बना रहे हैं because these people like me as a person, like the way I think. So staying true to that, building that community is what all content creators are also, most of us are also looking at. Now it's not all about one size pleases all.
Yeah.
So we are all building our own community, and I think as content creators, we are also maturing in understanding कि ज़रूरी नहीं है सबको आपका content पसंद आए, जिसको पसंद आ रहा है, उनके साथ grow करें आप, और वो आपके साथ grow करें.
Okay, but let me ask you a counter to that, right? Like, also understanding what your audience likes and doesn't like takes a while, right? You do a little bit of experimenting till you figure out, okay, this is maybe where what my audience is really responding to, and this is what my audience is not responding to. So, Tanmay, Shraddha, Prasoon, sir, how do you figure out, and are you then catering to what only your audience likes, or where does the authenticity come in?
I think फिर तो आप थोड़े numbers के slaves बन जाते हो, थोड़ा dashboard
Numbers
के
के slave
गुलाम
कौन
बन जाते
बनेंगे
हो.
यार?
Yeah. So अगर उसे freedom चाहिए, then you have to look inwards. Who are you? And then, what are your experiences? So don't stop living life. And आपको क्या what do you feel? What do you see? What do you want to tell? अगर focus इस पे रखेंगे, because audience change होती रहेगी और बाजार भी change होगा. You can't control that.
Yeah.
What can I control what my audience is exposed to outside of my content? I can't. What I can control is me. And I look inwards. So that sort of helps being authentic or...
No, that's a great way to look at it. What can I control versus what can I absolutely not control?
Yeah.
Tanmay?
What do audiences like across mediums? कुछ basic चीजें हैं जो like principles of storytelling hai, across different mediums. So for example, I say that, hey, pleasant surprises, no matter what the medium, they always do well. So for example, अगर मैं कोई joke बताऊँ, ठीक है, कि oh, my grandfather had a lion's heart, and that's why he's not allowed in a zoo anymore, right? For example, right? तो इसमें क्या है? अच्छा, ये I misled the audience into believing X, and then Y happened, right? And let's change mediums now. Let's change mediums. Let's take Instagram trends for a second, right? You guys have all probably have seen this trend, which is, someone will sit and there'll be a little quiz going on their head, which is, which cartoon are you? And then it changes. At the end of it, like something gets flashed, right? Which is you're, again, tempting the audience to figure out what's going to happen in the end, there's a flip that comes in the end. Or, put your head on my shoulders. Like, snap hota hai kuch to, or, बंदों के कपड़े change हो जाते हैं end moment पे. Or you take, so across different mediums, like some basics of storytelling still are the same, which is either misleading and then surprising, or building anticipation and then pleasantly surprising. These things, they don't change no matter what you're doing. So at the end of the day, every platform wants you to watch for as long as possible. That's at the heart of every algorithm.
To hook you in, yeah.
So some basics don't change. So yeah, I think times might change, platforms might change, but basics of storytelling can still be applied to all of them.
Storytelling में कह रहे हैं कि storytelling, if you see, the biggest change I have seen in storytelling is that there are more storytellers today than ever before. So आप जिसे अपनी कहानी सुनाना चाहते हैं, वो भी आपको अपनी कहानी सुनाना चाहता है. इससे पहले कि आप अपनी कहानी बताएं, वो अपनी कहानी बताने को बेताब है. तो आपने शुरू किया तो मेरे पास भी, so he is actually not listening. So as content creators or advertisers, we feel, how do I tell you my story, because you want to tell your story. And today it's not that पहले ऐसा नहीं होता था, but today you got tools and platforms where you can tell your story. So as a brand narrator, your central narrative of your brand is hardly in your control. Also, people are dying to tell your stories.
Everything is UGC.
I was just going to say, Tanmay has like a joke or a one-liner in his mind.
It is true.
पकड़ के रख रहा है.
हमें पैसे मिलते हैं कंटेंट बनाने के लिए, पर जनता पहले से ही सब कुछ UGC बनाओ तुम. हमको नहीं सुनना है आपकी बात. UGC is everything.
Also, see, this is the active performer and passive listener culture से हम लोग आते हैं. Especially if you ask me, I've seen over the years, active performer, passive listener. मैं आपसे श्रेष्ठ हूँ, मैं आपसे बढ़िया हूँ, मेरी बात सुनो. ऐसे कल्चर से हम लोग आते हैं कि एक परफॉर्मर आया, उसने गाना शुरू किया, उसके क्या गाता है, सब चुप है. उसके बाद हम ये एक्सपेक्ट करते हैं कि पैसिव लिसनर होगा. But today we are living in an era where there is an active performer and active listener. Now that is a very new reality. How to deal with this two-way traffic. is also a big challenge of today. You know, 5 ways of he reaching out to you. अभी पिक्चर खत्म नहीं हुई है, उसके इंटरवल भी नहीं हुआ है, उसने लिखा पिक्चर बकवास है, देखने मत आना.
Said disable comments
kind of
under the video.
Two-way, you know, instant response. This era we haven't seen before, and that's the reason certain things are unprecedented in this era.
Sir, ये stage पे भी active listener, passive वो हो रहा है sir. Both Tanmay and Shraddha ready with the mics before you finish.
मैं तो सर की बात सुनते सुनते मैं collab post करने के लिए तैयार हूँ. Sir, I would like to become active performer with you immediately.
Sir, collabs now go 3 ways. If you can send Shraddha and me also collab request.
This is us engaging with the content, and content का success is measured by engagement. कितना हम लोग like, comment, yes.
ये सब glance पे जा रहा है कि नहीं जा रहा है? Where are glance reps? Glance पे जा रहा है कि नहीं जा रहा? Are we live or not live? She's like not sure. She's like, why are you putting me on the spot? Okay, but guys, I also want to ask you, right? Matlab, chalo, we've talked about how things are changing. Now let's talk about also like how do you, like what are the different trends like you've seen right now? Like we're in a room filled with marketing people, right? So if you guys had to give them tools about what you think the future looks like and how they need to better engage their audience or the teams that they're working with or the influencers, the creators that they're working with, what are those tools and what are those suggestions you would give them? You can take your time, guys. Everyone's looking here, there.
ऐसा कुछ नहीं है.
Okay, whoever wants to go first.
Understanding is very important. I'm sorry, I'll give it to you.
Okay.
But as she said, we're looking here and there. We're not. Actually, see, एक पुलाव होता है, एक ख्याली पुलाव होता है.
सर क्या लाइंस मारे, प्लीज तालियां हो जाए यार. एक पुलाव होता है, एक ख्याली पुलाव होता है.
पुलाव इज एनालॉग, टेक्स टाइम. ख्याली पुलाव इंस्टेंट होता है. ठीक, आपको इमेजिनेशन में कुछ भी बन सकते. आप अभी सुपरमैन बनना चाहते हैं, एक आंख बंद किया, ब्लिंक ऑफ an eye, you can become what you want. You can imagine yourself. I want to see myself in London, on the streets. आंख बंद की, पहुंच गए आप. ये ख्याली पुलाव हमेशा था. अभी एक नया पुलाव आया, डिजिटल पुलाव, जो बीच में है. See, actually you can achieve through AI, through various tools today, something in between the pulav and khayali pulav. That it might not be that instant that you would reach there, but you can still create it very fast. You can still see yourself actually with Mid-Journey today, with AI tools today, you can instantly see a poem, you can instantly write a story, you can instantly see a visual. So somewhere which you only could do in your khayal, you can also see in certain form today. Now this content which is coming out there, it's a new reality. And how do you deal with it is what you have to probably, people fear it, people think that, a lot of people talk about, creative professions being impacted by this instant creation, which can be done with blink, like imagination. So this reality, how will you deal with it? Will you trust this? Where humans will go, where collective, we were, Tanmay and we just talking about collective sort of ideation. Will collective ideation be required? Because on one hand, you have AI, we got collective of billions together available to you. So would people value him and me sitting together and collectively ideating? Or when there is thousands of minds already out there ideating for you, will outshine you? So these questions need to be debated beyond commercial world. I'm saying beyond commercial world, because these are rather more sort of, existentialist questions. And I think if we get the answer of this world, fundamentals have to be, corrected first. And you need to get that real, that the storytelling is not in your hand. You cannot say that this is my brand today. Brands are discussed in absentia. Yeah. Suppose you are the brand creator, I am the creative person. We earlier used to beam things at people. ये हम दिखाते हैं. This is what our brand is all about. But you and me are not in equation, and two people are actually creating for your brand and talking. So brand in absentia is growing and having its own narrative. Now, how do you control that narrative? These are the questions, if you don't answer, I think today's world will overwhelm you. That's what I feel.
Sir, भूख लग गई, by God. इतनी पुलाव की बात कर दी हमने.
No, but, since we're talking about AI so much, let's actually get into it, right? Like, how do you see the AI tools being used for creation? I mean, we're already all using it. And backstage, let me tell you guys, we had a very long chat about ChatGPT, about AI, and how we see it probably, changing everything that we've been doing so far. So, Tanmay, you want to take the lead on that, like AI tools, and how do you think that could better the content that we're already consuming?
Yeah, I think we discussed this backstage. I think most AI tools where
Sorry, guys. We're so sorry we discussed stuff backstage.
No,
we
it's
should
all
not
good.
have.
It's all good. I think most tools where they are today are really, like the word that Sir came up with was, I said that most of the tools today are really smart interns, right? Like earlier you would need a writer's room. Now you can replicate that with GPT. And then Sir said, which smart intern have you ever met who's not very ambitious? Which is also fair. But yeah, most of them are amazing tools. I don't think there is... I think the folks who are early adapters or at least early tinkerers will be able to see the potential more than the folks who get anxious by it. I think cost of content production is going to go right into the bottom more and more. We are going to see a lot more spam, a lot more scam than ever before. So the need for freshness will probably go higher. There is an opportunity to do something bigger. I'm just trying to do quick bullet points. Say, okay, this could happen. But it's largely, I'm excited and I'm optimistic in general about technology. I don't think this is one that is likely to replace, but more likely to enhance.
No, and I agree with you. I feel like the early adapters will have that advantage. But I also, because AI feels so complex when you just discuss it, right? And there's so many levels and layers to it. Like, show me with a round of hands, like, how many of you guys have used ChatGPT in any format? Wow. So clearly not a room that's anxious about technology, right? But for someone who is anxious, right, and doesn't know where to start or how to understand this universe that is now going to hit us, where should they begin?
Get AI to start composing your emails first. Like marketing agencies जो email भेजती है content creators को, मतलब I think there is a वहाँ पे ही बहुत सारा opportunity है to improve those emails and communicate better. मतलब क्या emails आते हैं, like उसमें brief होता है लेकिन नहीं होता है.
Say give example ना, say ना, किसने ऐसा brief email भेजा?
नहीं मतलब वही.
So tell me the most random example of an email that you've gotten where it was like, I wish
hope this email finds you in great health.
Insert name.
Insert name. Dear, कुछ तो वो भी नहीं कर. Dear creator, hope this email finds you in great health. We really enjoy your content. मेरा नाम भी नहीं आता आपको. We would like to explore an association with you.
Nice to talk to you, Miss Ayyo.
Yeah. Yeah. Why don't you tell us how much money you charge? Just direct. आप क्या चाहते हो?
Dude, this feels so... I'm sorry to jump in, but it feels so strange when random people, and I don't know, again, this has happened to, I don't know, Tanmay. I'm certain no one dares to do this, Prasoon sir.
Yeah.
But हमारे DMs में लोग आके बोलते just rate card भेजो. What the hell?
Yeah, that. And also, I think the email can be very much more efficient. Like there are some emails that will start with the guy who founded your company 160 years ago. Miss Emilia Mark started this company. और मैं पूरा पढ़ूं आपका 250 पेज का ऐसे, फिर लास्ट में आपका रेट कार्ड क्या है? इससे अच्छा आप ये बताइए कि क्या सोच रहे हैं आप? Like if you can use AI to tell AI कि एक ऐसा email बना हमको श्रद्धा को भेजना है जिससे कि फटाफट पता चले.
That's what the tools exist, but the fundamentals don't change. For example, अगर कोई email लिखता है and the agenda of the email is कि बस 20 मिनट बात हो जाए.
Correct.
ठीक है. तो उसको आप 200 वर्ड में लिखो या 20 वर्ड में लिखो, that's not the thing. The true insight here is that why would someone take a 20-minute meeting with you? Like that's the thing you have to crack. It doesn't matter how flowery the language is.
Yeah.
It's you got to figure out like what is it that's going to make you want to meet someone for 20 minutes. Asking for it is likely not going to get you that.
This brings me back to the same point that Prasoon made earlier, which was about the fact that there has to be a payoff. Even in your email, there has to be a payoff, right?
Correct.
Like, why do I want to speak with you? Why do I want to have a 20-minute meeting or a conversation with you? Right? But coming back to my question, which was about anxious people in technology, where should they start?
First of all, as I said, understand the fundamentals. What is AI? AI is a collective response to what we. So if I am talking to, so three of you get together, you collective against me, you're going to win. See, understand you're getting more minds, more experience, more data put together versus one person. See, my download is X, and X to the power n. This is like enormous.
Correct.
So how would you use something like that? How would you use so much of information, so many minds together? How would you use that in a normal everyday life? If you feel that there are all of them here together, we give them a problem to solve versus I solve it. What would be the difference? That's how one should consume AI. First of all, it's a collective response. This is an individual response. Now, how would you, in any profession, in creative profession, non-creative profession, finance, wherever? I think to begin with, you should take a kind of a dipstick, kind of a sample of it, and see how is it responding.
Do you guys do that? I mean,
see,
with everything, because I mean, everyone here on stage is a sort of different kind of creator, right, in
Yes,
their own way. Is there a dipstick that you guys do, let's say, before experimenting with, whether it's a new ad film, whether it's a new tool, whether it's a new sketch, whether it's a new piece of content, and who consists of that sample pool?
AI is doing it as you. I think it's also important. So I was in Cannes, and that Will.i.am was speaking about creating a song, and he did a demo in
Does
front of us.
everyone know who Will.i.am is? Yes, cool. Great, guys,
So
just checking.
he was talking about how AI is creating, and he sort of sampled it. He's put a few sort of lines for AI to develop. I want a song of a girl lost, trying to find her way, something like this.
Classic Will.i.am.
Okay. So then probably we saw some lyrics coming. Then he further inputted. So he was doing the demo for people, and it was for beginners. It was very clear that the one who says something like this is the originator. He's the one who's controlling, because you are actually at this stage. I'm not saying AI is going to be exactly like this forever. There is a danger of AI producing another AI, and we keep talking about it. I'm not getting into that side of it right now. I'm saying how we can use it today. Is that as finer as you want, you can get it. It's how you input, how you control. You are the puppeteer. And if you consider yourself that, you can descend upon and get the results finer and finer. And AI is getting better at it as you are telling. So I think it's important right now to have someone who is a conductor of the show. And you are the conductor of it. So it's me, it's not AI. Don't consider that's I. The day AI actually considers I, we are done. Because, because the sense of I coming there would be very dangerous.
I would love to ask GPT-4 to write a poem about AI in the style of Prasoon Joshi.
Modeled on Prasoon.
That would be beautiful.
An AI model.
You know, he said something to us backstage, right, about how he can convert anything into a song.
Yeah,
and I really wanted to put him on the spot, but I don't know if I have his permission.
Tujhe sab hai pata, AI. It would be perfect.
Because we were having a long chat, and he was like, he told us about how you taught your daughter all her answers for school and important things through songs.
Poems.
You made it into poems or songs, right? I would love to tinkle and I know.
It's possible. We all brought up our tables you learned like that. Anything which is in a rhythm form. And I think Tare Zameen Par was actually the experiment. We had all the songs tried to write like that. Also my songs are like, mostly I feel that there should be in a rhythm saying big thoughts very simply, because if that's the power of poetry, and that's where I still feel AI has a long way to go. The way we simplify our thoughts in poetic form, yes, the language mastery is phenomenal. AI, the way it's growing, is dangerously going ahead, but still the way we essence of it and distill it in the form of akkad bakkad bambebo kind of thing. Very simple things which are even folk tales are like, those things I value a lot.
So, इस शाम की अगर बात करें और दो शब्द Like 1-2 lines of poetry, if you could. I know I'm putting you on the spot. But I also know that
I was learning about, for example, glance, and the thought of it, like locked window, and you are. So I felt it is more curated and more sort of narrowed down. Like these days, data tries to narrow you down, corner you, and I am a person who likes to stumble upon things. A lot of people say कि आप advertising करते हैं, आप songs भी लिखते हैं, आप scripts भी लिखते हैं, और आप CVFC में film certification भी करते हैं. I like stumbling upon life. I'm a self-made person. I have no sort of, coming from किसी जमींदार का से नहीं आया हूँ मैं कि मुझे पता है मुझे कहाँ जाना है. हम में से ज़्यादातर लोग वही हैं. We actually don't want that option to be taken. So मैं हूं किस सफर में समझने तो दो, नया सच नजर से उतरने तो दो. मुझे आप डिफाइन कर देते हैं, एंड एवरीबडी हैज दिस प्रॉब्लम. बिफोर आई नो, बिफोर यू नो, पीपल वांट टू डिफाइन यू. कहाँ रहते हो, आपको नैरो डाउन कर रहे हैं. देखिए जिंदगी में फटाफट नैरो डाउन करके, क्योंकि डर लगता है जो नैरो डाउन नहीं है उससे, तो जल्दी से उसे शीशे में उतारते हैं. कहाँ रहते हो, अच्छा हाउ डू यू कम्यूट फ्रॉम देयर, इसकी गाड़ी का पता करना है, कौन सी गाड़ी है. अच्छा वो यू लिव विद पेरेंट्स, नो आई एम मैरिड. ओके
What is your rate?
नाउ धीरे धीरे from his sexuality to the family to his, how much you are narrowing it down, and not everybody is enjoying that. Actually, you are not enjoying that. So what I like about your product right now is that you're not trying to narrow down. लोगों को जल्दी में शीशे में उतारना गलत है. Especially people who in modern India, where people are actually trying to jump orbits, trying to explore. उनको भी opportunities मिल रही हैं, आप उनको define करके बेचारों की opportunity कम कर रहे हो. उससे कह रहे हो कि तू यही करना चाहिए, तुझे यही करना चाहिए.
This is also the bias that people fear in artificial intelligence. Bias. That if you are going to create this bias in artificial intelligence and that starts dictating all your decisions, we are going about it the wrong way. Yeah, that's so true.
So it is something which I seriously feel that we should watch, that at least stop doing to each other. And I think in tomorrow's way, the social media, tomorrow's products should also remember that there is a deep down desire in all of us, human desire to explore. Yeah. Let's not take that option away from people to stumble upon life. That's how it is. Because otherwise, तो मैं वही बन पाऊंगा जिस घर में मैं पैदा हुआ, जिस स्कूल में मैं गया, उसके अलावा तो मैं कुछ नहीं बन पाऊंगा.
सर मैं तो बोलता हूँ AI बैन करते. I've become a skeptic in the last 10 minutes all of a sudden. I'm suddenly like, this is not good actually. I agree with him. This is just ban this thing.
You don't want your smart intern anymore.
No, it's fine. You go intern somewhere else.
As far as it's your slave, is fabulous.
Yeah, and that's right. So when
Sir, slave नहीं चाहते. I'm not even kidding. कुछ दिन पहले मेरा एक दोस्त है जो बहुत दिनों से डेट पे नहीं गया और वो मुझे बोल रहा है बड़े सीरियसली, मैं तो रुक रहा हूँ AI गर्लफ्रेंड के लिए.
Tell me, okay, you tell me, you guys, and say, should freedom of expression be a right for AI or not? Or is it only reserved for humans?
सर ये सैम ऑल्टमैन को पूछना चाहिए था जब वो आया था.
हम डील नहीं कर पाएंगे उसके एक्सप्रेशन से. My God, can we? Yeah.
I feel like नहीं होना चाहिए. फिर सर हमारी जरूरत नहीं पड़ने वाली है बहुत जल्दी. But on that, we're not going to end on that morbid note, guys. Don't worry. We're not going to be like, हमारे futures का क्या हो रहा है?
But it's not morbid.
It is slightly morbid to some of us.
It is going to be an inevitability.
Correct.
When you have private companies who own data models, the counter to that is not other private companies. The competition isn't one private company versus another. Yeah. The competition is going to be private companies versus open source.
Correct.
Open source is going to be have more freedom. Open source literally means कि मैंने बना दिया है, अब जिसको जो करना है करो.
Absolutely.
It's too late. You can't help it.
No, you can't. See, you can't control AI. AI is there. Now you have to learn to live with AI. And I think that we will evolve and we will have to learn to live with it. Should not see it as an enemy. I would right now see it as an ally. And better at do things better than
100 साल पहले ऐसे टाइप के इवेंट में कोई स्टीम इंजन के बारे में यही कह रहा था. क्या लगता है स्टीम इंजन दोस्त है?
दुश्मन.
क्या की दुश्मन?
Steam engine की any other machine is not able to replicate itself. This is the only time in the human history, we have something
Yeah.
which can replicate itself.
Yeah.
So no machine can better itself without human intervention. This
Yeah.
can.
Right. And I think AI की जब भी बात होती है, दो ही conversations होते हैं. एक AI से मेरी नौकरी कैसे बचाएं, और दो CFO is asking इससे पैसे कैसे बचाएं. कोई
आपके
इस पर
पास
दोस्ती
ऐसी बात
करना ही नहीं
करते हैं?
चाहता है. AI के like nobody like it's that right, like we spoke about not how many of us actually try AI, but हम लोग सब बोल रहे हैं कि AI से कैसे ज़्यादा पैसा बनाएं, कैसे पैसा
Tension
बचाएं,
already
कैसे
है,
नौकरी बचाएं.
use
ये
तो किया नहीं
conversations
है.
हैं.
You know
Yeah,
what?
use कर लो. Let's yeah, play around with AI. So
I saw the funniest thing yesterday, which is everywhere the conversation about AI is like this intellectual conversation. But if you look at Google Trends, you know what the number one search for AI, for an AI trend in India is? The number one AI search term in India is remove dress AI. I'm not even exaggerating. You look at Google Analytics in the last 1 year, this is the number one search term, remove dress AI.
How did you stumble on this?
I searched for it.
nugget of
I literally went and be like keywords AI, what are the top trends? The number one was remove dress AI.
खुराफाती आदमी आप.
जनता क्या चाहती है? अच्छा वही चाहती है अब तक. ठीक है चलो वही चल रहा है. अच्छा,
जनता
अच्छा.
है नहीं फिर like yeah.
Guys, a lot of you all must be wondering why this conversation is about AI and content, because we feel like now backstage, that's what we also sort of ended up realizing, that content and AI largely now go hand in hand. But we also wanted to sort of talk about this locked screen app that we're now using, right? Like, I mean, sir already spoken about it. I wanted to know from you guys. Yeah, Tanmay is showing how he figured out how AI dress remove, whatever that.
I took the screenshot. Remove dress AI tool number 1. Remove dress AI number 2. Number 3, dress remover AI. It's the same. Top 3 are the same. It's the same search. Anyway, go on. Sorry to interrupt.
No, but you know, given that
Reality
we
check, yeah?
given that we have a lock screen app, which is on most Android phones, by the way. Unfortunately, we are iOS users, so we've not had to have the experience as much as, say, an Android user has had. But with a lock screen app that's curating content for you, what do you think is a great way for content creators to exploit that, and for brands and for marketing heads sitting in this room to exploit that?
I think it's the only time where there isn't competition, right? Or at least you are not part of a doom scrolling activity. So I think that is interesting. But as a consumer, I have mixed feelings about it. But I realize that as a content creator, it's a thing that you can exploit, because that's the only time I'm not literally in the middle of just wanting to consume non-stop. You know, I can actually be engaged.
I mean, I like the fact that I can sometimes get news updates literally from looking at my lock screen without having to go into search for it or to actually dig out information, as long as, of course, that news is verified and not some false piece of information being hit at me.
आपको एंजाइटी ढूंढने में मजा आता है क्या? कि आज न्यूज़ पढ़ लिया भाई, बहुत मजा आ गया. I was
पढ़ती हूँ यार, मैं क्या करूँ? Born journalist will die a journalist, मतलब वो है, intrinsic interest है.
लेकिन आपके बच्चों के साथ अब अपना फोन पासवर्ड शेयर करने की जरूरत नहीं है. सिर्फ फोन दे दो, वो वैसे ही बिजी रहेंगे without knowing your password or unlocking your phone, thanks to Glance Forward.
Yeah.
But you're right. You know, that's what was a concern in my head. But what got cleared is that this is again that same thing I said. You stumble upon news. You stumble upon content. This is not trying to narrow you down and say that this is me.
It's not boxing you.
It is them.
Yeah.
It is the world. Yeah. So the world can be. At glance.
Yeah.
Yeah. Though I like deep dive, so I'm not a glancer. I feel I need to get into it. But, getting people a sense of it while, it's like a swipe, surf. This is the world we live in,
And truthfully, I'm a glancer first and then a deep diver. So if something catches my attention, I will go down that black hole of searching everything about it. And that's why I find something like this very interesting.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
The algorithm also does that for you.
Say Tanmay, what do you want to say? What?
कर ले चांस पे डांस. Just download Glance.
तो कब से इसके ऊपर बैठा था? सच बोल.
अभी मैंने GPT ने बनाया मेरे लिए.
All right, guys, and with that, we've come to the end of our session. I'm being told that we have to get off stage. But do you think we should give everyone one chance, because it is Glance, to ask a question to our amazing little panel here? Yeah? I got your permission? Yeah. Cool. Anyone who wants to ask us one or two really fun questions, make it interesting.
मुझे जिंदगी में कभी किसी ने little adjective use नहीं किया मेरे सामने, but it's nice.
I know. Anyone? Or otherwise your beers and your other alcohols are waiting.
No. Even the alcohol names are so creative. It's there's a drink called Clicks on the Beach.
Who came up with that one?
किसी copywriter की जान गई है ये लिखने में भाई रात के 2 बजे.
ये GPT ने किया है.
No questions? Shall we leave so that you all can go eat and drink? Yeah?
All right.
Oh, I'll hand it over to you. Okay. We're being told, okay, go upstairs.
Oh,
okay.
okay.
All right. Thank you so much, guys. You've been a wonderful audience. And please, a round of applause for our wonderful guests.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Right, handing it.
All right, let's give them a wonderful, big, huge round of applause, guys. What a wonderful way to sort of end the evening. I am self-aware enough to know that I couldn't really say anything to follow up that a wonderful discussion. So I'm giving it to the next smartest person I know in the room, which is Abhay Singhal, and he will say a few words before we end the night.
Oh, thank you very much. And I was having this big fanboy moment or little fanboy moment sitting here, listening to these three people. Prasoon sir with this song Ma, I think he can make me still cry today. And Tanmay and Shraddha, you guys make us cry every day. Dude, you make my stomach move, let's just say that way. But I think this is just a fabulous. So thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for this fabulous time that you've given all of us. Thank you to everybody for your valuable advice, for your comments on how we're doing. We get inspired every single day. I mean, it's not easy being different. And I think some of these influencers here know that. You have to stand outside the crowd. You have to stand alone. You have to be misunderstood. You have to stand until the world comes around to understanding you. And you have to stand until then. Glance will continue to stand until then, and we will hope to be able to turn the entire world around to see this new form of content consumption. So with that, thank you very much, everyone. Please join us for drinks and dinner outside, and we'll see you in another Glance Forward in the next few months or year, whenever we do it next. But thank you.